Good evening and welcome. It's another one of our Friday Night Hotspot FNO Preview shows. Hello and welcome to the VATSIM USA Twitch, VATUSA's official Twitch channel. And we do appreciate you being here for what is going to be an excellent program this evening. We've got representatives from Boston, New York, and Washington ARTCCs on VATSIM ready to discuss this upcoming Friday Night Ops event, which is a huge one. It's a huge one that we've done for many, many years here on VATUSA. It's called the Northeast Corridor Friday Night Ops event, coming up on the 18th, this coming February. And we'll be talking about it tonight with Cameron Peterson, the event coordinator from Boston Virtual ARTCC. Cameron, hello.
Hey, Rob, how's it going?
With Jeremy Peterson, the National Operations Manager for VATUSA and former New York Controller. Jeremy, how are you?
Hello, I'm good. I'm also not related to Cameron.
I was just going to ask that, actually, so thank you for getting ahead of my joke. I assumed that you guys are so distant cousin, Jeremy Peterson and Cameron Peterson. Welcome. And from Washington ARTCC, we have the Assistant Events Coordinator, Henry Grayer. Henry, how are you?
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
And the Air Traffic Manager, Jared West.
Hey, how are you, Rob?
And I think I know the answer to this before I ask it, but you're no relation to Kanye West, right?
No relation.
Just okay. Distant cousin Kanye West. Okay, very good. Welcome to the program, guys, and we'll come around the room and talk more about who you are and what your contribution to the community is. But I will, as I always do, I will pull rank here, and I will introduce myself first for those who are watching who are not familiar with my live stream. My name is Rob, and I'm the host of a Twitch aviation live stream called Slant Alpha Adventures, where we focus on non-RNAV procedures, radio-based navigation procedures. That's what Slant Alpha means, after all, navigating before the advent of GPSs and flight management computers and all that fancy schmancy moving map boxes that you have on aircraft these days that help you not get lost. So we get lost on my channel all the time. We navigate through just the old radio-based navigation methods, VOR radial tracking, NDBs, and that sort of thing. And we lately have done quite a bit of eyeball navigation, eyeballs out the window kind of VFR navigation as well. So hope that you come over and check us out. We're on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 7 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time for the most part. There's some variation to that schedule. Obviously, things like tonight preempt that schedule, but for the most part, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 7 p.m. So happy to be here. Happy to have such a great panel with you. So Cameron Peterson, why don't you tell us more about yourself, sir?
Hey, Rob, thanks. I'm the events coordinator for the Boston Virtual ARTCC. I've been in VATSIM roughly since 2019, and so joined Boston there a bit after. I'm from the area, so figured might as well stick close to home. Been in DC for coming on 9 months, I think. So I'm really looking forward to this really cool event.
Very, very good. Yes, and a long-standing one, which we'll talk about in just a few. Jeremy, give us an overview about your experience.
Yeah, so I'm the National Operations Manager of the VATUSA Command Center, which just means I help make sure that all the traffic flowing throughout, for events and stuff is as efficient as we can possibly get it. We like to distribute delays as much as possible and basically help facilities work with each other to make sure events run smoothly. Before this, I was the events coordinator at New York for 2 years, I think. And then before that, I had joined New York a year prior, I think. So I've been around VATSIM for something like 4 years now.
All right, very good. Thank you, and thank you very much for what we call pinch hitting for the New York team here.
No problem.
Guess you should be wearing a uniform of pinstripes for that, but we'll just.
I have my New York Islanders sweatshirt on.
Okay, that's
don't tell Anthony Santanastasso.
Very good. Yeah, he's a Rangers guy. Is that right?
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, we'll leave that can of worms. Hopefully not too far open. But Henry, give us an overview about your experience here, sir.
Yeah, so Henry, I've probably been on VATSIM for around 2 years now. I've been simming for a few years before that. Probably joined ZDC a little over a year ago. Worked my way up to C1, and a few months ago I joined the events team over there, and excited to be helping out with this.
Very good. And Jared, my virtual boss at ZDC.
Hey, how you doing, Rob? So I've been. I may not have a relative Kanye, but I do have for us who are old, a cousin Adam West. So I'll let you chew on that
Oh,
a
there you
little
go.
bit. But no, I'm the ATM at ZDC. I've been a member of ZDC for about 5 years. I average about 1,000 hours a year as a pilot on VATSIM. I probably have no life. um,
Well, we all are here
in the
on
current,
Valentine's Day, so that tells you all you need to know, I
True.
think.
see, there you go, exactly. I've been the ATM at ZDC for a little less than a year, but I was the TA for a couple of years before that, and had the privilege of taking Rob through S1 and S2 training, which is a lot of fun. And so now we're looking forward to S3.
And now that's why I've
get that one
stopped
in
there. No.
Yeah, exactly right. Real world experience. You know, I'm not professional aviation, but I do have my private pilot license. So.
No. Yep, that's right. Yeah, you used to fly out of what was it, Centennial out in Denver?
Centennial in Denver. Yep.
Yep, very cool. Yeah, all right, very good. All right, well, talking about the delay program that Jeremy mentioned, we're hoping not to have to institute a whole lot of it. But Cameron, tell us about the event here, and I know that your community manager Evan was keen to make sure that we mentioned that that even though that Boston is the featured facility, there's definitely some other flying opportunities up that way. So take us through what the event's all about and its history, and then and talk about that for us.
Yeah, so unfortunately, probably to Jeremy's dismay, is we probably are going to have to use him a lot this week, unfortunately. But this northeast corner FNO started way back from about 5 ECs ago in the Boston area with the northeastern corridor in 2015. So it dates back, a long, long time in VATSIM terms. It really just shows like the strong connection that we have up here in the Northeast. So the northeastern sector of VATUSA is Cleveland, Boston, Washington, and New York. And so we really have a strong connection, especially in this corridor from DC to the New York Metro and all the way up to Boston, and then on first big events, up over to the pond. But there's a lot of traffic and high volumes through this area with descents into New York and traffic overflying the area into Boston and back down into Washington. So really, really fun event, really busy, and just looking forward to having a good time with everybody else.
Yep, very good. And I didn't even realize. I mean, obviously, I knew that these were, kind of in a line, but I didn't realize until plotting it on SkyVector before going live that these three airports are almost in a perfect line. So with New York being right nearly smack dab in the middle as you fly from DC to Boston. So yeah, it is an area of the country where the traffic can get very heavy. And Cameron, on that same topic, talk about some of the capacity limitations that you have up at Boston.
Yeah, so at Boston, we have a lot of complex areas. So we have two sets of parallels. We have, runway 4 right and 4 left. They are available pretty much for any type of aircraft. 4 right, we only have instrument approaches for. 4 left would have to be a visual and available only when we're VFR. But we can use it for departures. We also have 3-3 left and 3-3 right, which again, parallels, but 3-3 right there you can see is very, very small and only available really for prop aircraft. Roads at like 2,500 feet there.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever our config ends up being really limits how we can move traffic from the terminal out to the runways because we cross so many runways.
Right.
Just to go to 3-3 left, we're crossing 3 runways, and one of them we would be landing on would be 2-7. So that really restricts us even to arrivals to know that we need space to be able to cross people. And unfortunately, that does end up being delays where you depart, especially if you're inbound to Boston.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I don't think people realize. You think of Boston and well, they've got all these runways. How do they run into delays? Well, because of the way they're configured, it's like there's a limited number of ways you guys can use them. So it does kind of limit you as far as the number of aircraft you can land in an hour. So I think that's where we run into kind of bigger delays. And well, that combined with the fact that you guys always just do such a great job up there, and it's such a fun staff to work with and a great airport to fly into, scenery wise and network wise. So that I think it tends to be really, really popular, and it can be a problem that bites you on an event like tonight or this coming Friday when everyone is trying to go there. So to Evan's point, as much as Boston will be the featured field, I think, everyone would be happier if those who have maybe been to Boston before and flown in and out during events before maybe can, look at some of the other airports in the area, which we'll talk about here in just a few. But great intro, Cameron. Thanks for that. Jeremy, give us a brief overview of Kennedy. You don't have quite the operational constraints at Kennedy that we have here. Kennedy's a little bit more of a high capacity airport, yes?
Yeah, I mean, you could say that. The only problem is that instead of Boston being, I say, relatively isolated, Kennedy works with two other airports that are pretty much just as
Opposite
busy.
problem.
Yeah. Now, the good thing is that Kennedy or New York area is kind of built around Kennedy. So we have the nice availability of 4 good runways. All of them are long enough to land pretty much any airplane, unless you're Concorde. It's looking at the weather, it's probably going to be a northwest flow, wind coming from the northwest, which means we're going to be landing 31s,
Gotcha.
which gives us a pretty good rate. And that's kind of like the ideal balanced departure or arrival and departure configuration. However, if things get hairy, they can prioritize arrivals or departures by switching over to the 22s or the 4s, and then cutting off part of 31 left and departing from an intersection. So we
okay.
kind of have 3 non-intersecting runways.
Cut it off here like Kilo Echo.
Yeah, Kilo Echo. That's what we do, and that gives us a better rate. I don't know what they're going to do. I haven't talked to them about it yet.
Yeah,
but
it's a little far out to know for sure, but yeah. But
Yeah.
so 3-1s is kind of your preferred flow, yes?
Yeah, it is, and it works good with the taxiway configuration as well. Which,
Gotcha.
to be honest, there's not a whole lot of taxiway constraints, but some are just better than others. But I think the biggest concern is just the airspace saturation that we can run into.
Right. Yeah.
If we have 3 flows, one from the northwest, which is the Lundy and Kingston flow. We have one from the southwest, which is coming from DC, that's the Cameron flow, and then the other one from the northeast, which is where Boston's going to be coming over. And if all 3 of those are packed, then Kennedy has a real hard time running at 100% operations. But I mean, like I said before, my job is to help the RTECs kind of manage that, balance everything out. So hopefully we'll be managing those things tactically.
Well, keep our fingers crossed that we don't need to institute too many big delay programs, but we know you'll be on top of it. So thank you for that. All right, Jared, you're going to talk us through DCA. We got all kinds of space limitations here, yes?
Yeah, well, if you were going to build an airport on a postage stamp, its name would be Washington National. That's one of the big things is we're working with, really small ramps, really small taxiways. Everybody's real close together. On top of that, sure, we have 3 runways, but they're all intersect, and really one of them is the operational runway, right?
Yeah.
So we have to balance, departures and arrivals off of the same runway, as well as working with, a small ground and really a small airspace because we're jammed in between Dulles and Andrews Air Force Base. So all of that makes and the prohibited airspace, that surrounds the airport as well. So
yeah, which we famously kind of talk about on my channel from time to time. So
yep, exactly.
Very
the old
good.
CDC drinking game, but exactly.
Right.
What I was going to say is one of the ways I think you can help us as far as space constraints and that kind of thing is we do sometimes use runway 33. I don't know if you do that when you're controlling in a busy event, Rob, but to have someone who's flying, a regional jet or a private jet or something like that, be able to circle for runway 33. Gives that tower controller just a couple more seconds to line someone up on runway 1, and you can kind of make a squeeze play there. And that actually is a strategy they use in the real world as well to kind of help with the space constraint.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I will say that I typically use it more when we're in South Flow, where I'll take the regional jets and the GA stuff up to 1.5 and line them up there while we're landing on 19. But the dangerous part of that is something that we'll talk about later with that river visual to runway 19. So, so that can be fun and exciting too, for the wrong reasons at times. All right, very good. While we are looking at the DC area, Henry, take us through some of the other airports that are in the area that might be good. As I always say, that as my live stream is more general aviation focused, so I kind of want to take a moment as we talk about these upcoming events to speak to the GA pilots that are watching and talk about what some of the other great places to fly might be on Friday if the if the main featured airports aren't their cup of tea. So give us a few examples of what we have here.
Yeah, so obviously the DCA along with Baltimore and Dulles are surrounded by a big Bravo. And around that Bravo is the Potomac Tracon, which is massive. It goes all the way up into New York Center, spanning all the way down past and south of Richmond. So you've got a lot of airports in there. Closer to DC, you've got a few airports under the Bravo. You've got Manassas, which is south of Dulles, that little field. No, that's
Actually, that's
yeah,
this is Manassas
yeah,
over here. Yep.
that's Manassas. You've got Leesburg, which is up really close to Dulles there. You've got a few around Dulles. If you're more into, flying, if you're an Air Force One guy and you want to fly fighter jets or big 747s, you can go to Andrews, which is big airport, but it's an interesting one. We've got a few uncontrolled airports near Baltimore. We've got Gaithersburg and Carroll County, which Carroll County is actually up into ZNY, but it's under the Potomac Tracon.
I might have cut it off. Actually, it's up here somewhere.
Yeah, it's up there. And I know Rob's home airport. You've got Martin State off to the northeast of Baltimore. With some interesting VOR approaches to 1.5.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that
if you want to do
ARC-VOR
that,
approach.
yeah.
Yep. The other one I always like to mention is Bay Bridge Airport right there by the Chesapeake Bay Bridge, that 4-mile span. And you got the pattern work that basically goes right over the superstructure. So that's always a fun one.
Yeah, that
Probably
as
a good
well.
one for 2020.
Yeah.
What's that?
It'd probably be a good one in 2020.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, all of that as well as south. You've got all those airports near Richmond, Charlottesville. There are a bunch of those.
Yep. Yeah, I think that most people don't realize that the Potomac Tracon goes all the way down there. So, yep. Very good. All right, Jeremy, run us through some of the highlights in the New York area other than the obvious ones.
Oh boy, highlights. So the nice thing about New York is that, the nice thing about Kennedy is that everything's built around it. That being said, the big blocking factor for Kennedy is the fact that LaGuardia is directly, well, it's not directly north, but it's to the north, and the airspace blocks northeast traffic. So in order to go anywhere northeast, including to Europe, to go northeast towards Canada, if you want to go northeast towards Boston, you have to turn left out of Kennedy and loop around. And that left turn is quite quick. Like you'll be over Brooklyn and Canarsie super quick, and then over the water, because we all know those Brooklyn and Queens people don't like hearing planes all night. But regardless, it's a left turn unless you're a prop. So that's a really important factor that we often see missed.
Yep, indeed. Well, we'll talk about the departure procedures in a little bit, but for GA enthusiasts, well, of course, there's always this Skyline route, which is really cool.
Oh, absolutely. And there's also Farmingdale. There's plenty of there are hundreds of airports. I don't know if there's actually hundreds, but there are at least tens of airports in the area. There's Westchester, there's Caldwell, there's Teterboro, there's Morristown. And in fact, I'm almost certain that LaGuardia and Newark are going to be staffed as well, and probably not that busy. So those are definitely reliever airports that you should look into. And people forget this, that also part of the New York Tracon is Stewart and Poughkeepsie all the way up north. So if you really wanted to relieve New York, fly up there. So.
Very good. Yep. Westchester County up here to the northeast. Let's see. Teterboro is this one over here to the west. Islip.
Teterboro is just northeast of Newark.
Yeah. Islip, which I cut off in the snip here, but the Islip is this Charlie that's over here just to the east. For GA fans, there's a really neat little grass airstrip right in this little keyhole that's cut out of the Islip Charlie. Bayport Aerodrome, that's a real neat one. Which we've featured on my live stream a few times, but yeah, lots of great stuff other than the obvious, which is Kennedy, but especially if you're a GA enthusiast, lots of great GA flying to be had in the New York Tracon area.
Yeah,
all right, Cameron, run us through what you have up in Boston.
Yeah, so Boston is the primary airport in the A90 Tracon. It is a consolidated Tracon, so it does actually feature Manchester and the Cape Cod airports. However, VATSIM-wise, the Boston Tracon is just Boston. How's how we run it. So in Boston, you have 5 deltas. So you have Hanscom just to the northwest of Boston. That one there is Lawrence. That's Hanscom there.
Yep, got it.
You have Norwood to the south there, and then Beverly is just to the northeast of Boston there. So those are all the
Gotcha.
deltas. Those will be covered top down by the approach controllers
Gotcha.
on Boston approach. If you want to also open up the Boston heli insert, that's another really cool thing that
definitely.
Boston has, are the heli routes.
Yep.
So these, what people don't know, can be flown by fixed-wing aircraft as well.
Some people do know. The people that have been through the VFR series
Yeah.
of the Boston Virtual ARTCC Wings Over New England training program, which I
Yeah.
highly recommend. But other
I
people
highly
don't know
recommend as
that, so
well.
go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt them, but I had to mention that.
Yeah, that is
That was how
it's a really
that
great
was how I
program.
learned it. So
Yeah. So people think heli routes are just for helicopters, but they're not. Fixed-wing aircraft can fly them all the time. A really cool one, especially in Microsoft Flight Sim, is the Piker route. So
Mhm.
from the west there, you come over what used to be the Weston Toll Plaza to now the interchange, and you come down Interstate 90, up over north of Boston College, down through Alston, and you intercept the Charles River into Boston. So it's really cool. You can transition the Bravo, maybe follow the Tobin route, which is the one that goes north, right over the Tobin Bridge and over the 3-3 departure corridor, which is a really, really cool. Just see the bridge, you see the airport off your right, inbound to the city on the Piker route.
Yep.
So those are really cool to fly as well.
Yeah, a lot of fun. That Wings Over New England program is fantastic. One of the best training programs on the network. Even though it's not officially recognized as a VATSIM pilot rating anymore, it used to be, but still highly worth doing in my estimation.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's bvartcc.com/wings.
Oh, yep. Yeah, well, we've featured that enough on my live stream that we'll leave it to the reader to find it for now. But yeah, no, great program. Actually, since we're talking about your website, you guys have some great resources for a lot of the stuff that we're about to cover for the rest of this evening. Talking about your letter to airmen and the kind of a guide on flying stars. So I'm going to pull those up real quick. But while I'm doing that, where's it? Are there pilots and pilot references? Is that where it is?
Should be there. The letter to airmen.
Yep. Okay,
right
there we are. The letter to airmen right there. So yeah, it's about a dozen pages or so. But this is a real good. By the way, for those of you who are watching, that if you'd like to have a reference in front of you to many of the things that we're going to be talking about tonight, this is a great resource to just pull up and read through when you get a chance. The letter to I didn't mean to close the browser, but the letter to airmen, and then what's the other one in pilot references? The preferred route database. Is the star one in here also?
It should be linked in the letter to airmen.
Oh, it's linked in the letter to airmen. Gotcha. Okay, so as we go back to that.
So this document is really...
Yeah, go ahead. Take us through it real quick.
Yeah, this document is kind of your one-stop place for flying into Boston. Part of our, foundation was the pilot base, so we really want to inform pilots kind of good practices to do on the network.
Right.
Recommending scenery to fly into Boston. We recommend our ATC timetable to show when we actually will be staffing up the airspace.
Right.
Some recommendations for radio calls, stuff like that, really helps for understanding of if you hear a call sign, you need to read back what the instruction was.
Gotcha.
But yeah, we have some RNAV departures, as well as I think you want to talk about the arrivals.
Yeah, let's kind of go into the arrivals first and talk about like certain ones that will be featured on Friday that we'll kind of want to just kind of highlight some key points of, and then like especially if there's any that you see that consistently have compliance issues that we can talk about how to avoid some of those common problems.
Yeah, so with this type of event, especially in the Northeast, all of the Boston arrivals for the most part will be coming on the Roebuck 3 arrival. So that comes up over Kennedy and down the South Shore into Boston, South Shore Boston.
Gotcha.
If you look at the first page, yep. So this is your transition. So out of DCA, you come up, J79 or Q435 into Kennedy.
Yeah, they recently changed it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, whatever it is now. Into Kennedy, and that first point there, news, is what you'll probably be given. You'll give an altitude restriction to cross that point, which
Okay.
flight level 270 from ATC.
Gotcha.
And then you continue on into the Roebuck. Out of New York, they get some sort of departure off of Kennedy, and they get vectored to Merritt. And so that's the New York point would be the Merritt arrival gate.
Gotcha.
And that all feeds in. Go ahead.
But this is from after news. You probably get the descend via clearance, right? Descend via the Roebuck 3, and that's where you're starting to hit all these.
Correct. Yeah, you start. Yeah, sometimes you might get the news. I believe New York gives that, or direct New York gets that. And then sometimes Boston might just get you to 23, so you might not get the descend via way out here. They might just step you down to flight level 230. The reason for that is they need to merge, the arrival with the New York stuff.
Gotcha.
So they keep the altitude separation.
Oh, okay.
So
Here's what you were talking about before. I missed that earlier. But Merritt is where where the two streams merge then at Ruiz there.
Yep.
Good. Got it.
And so that sector does become saturated sometimes. So you really need to be on top of your game, especially in the early stages of the arrival.
Right.
We come
and then
down.
The second page, yeah. I'm sorry. Did you
go ahead. Yeah, the second page there.
Gotcha.
So you come on Roebuck and you're still descending. Well, the most common one probably would be for 2-2. So Provy, Judy, Cran, Cradle, Kleb, Ethan, Patrick, and then if you scroll up a little bit to Tail.
Right. Yeah, and
Tail
the way
there.
I always kind of recommend this, if you look at the continuation page and it says landing 2-2s, really if you can see which one it goes to last, then you can kind of come back here and figure out which path it is.
Yeah, and so Tail's the end of the Roebuck if we're landing 2-2 left.
One might
and you
call
see
it the tail.
There's the arrow just kind of continues. There's no arrow to the left or any sort of heading to the left. You're supposed to fly the 035 track until ATC tells you otherwise.
Right.
And that's listed there on your second page or your notes page that you like as well.
Right. Yeah, and that's one that exactly. That's a point that we come back to on a lot of these, that there's a tendency among pilots to delete the discontinuity at the end of the star and the beginning of the approach and to link those 2 points. But, a lot of tutorials that tell you to do that are based on non-multiplayer areas where you don't have realistic air traffic control on other pilots. So whenever you see this expect radar vectors, that's a good red flag to indicate to you that you probably should leave that discontinuity in there, or at the very least, you should make sure you're getting the plane into heading mode so that you're maintaining that 035 until you're told to turn it. So it's a point that we come back to on every time we do these panels, but I think it bears repeating because it's a big one that a lot of folks coming into the VATSIM network from non-multiplayer situations do tend to miss.
Yeah, and it really is important just because, that you're entering, in this case, the final controller, where there isn't much airspace to fix the problem if you kind of don't follow the instruction. So.
Gotcha. Good point. Good point. And then the other question that comes up is like, well, how do you know ahead of time which of these paths you're supposed to follow? And that's a function of when you get your descend via clearance, they'll tell you which runway you'll transition to follow, right? But the way to get a heads up on that is by checking the ATIS information. Yeah, indeed. Very good.
Yeah, and a really, really cool shortcut that I like to recommend. The ATIS shows up in your controller or your pilot client, excuse me. And if you double click the ATIS, you can do that. Also will print you the text version. You can type a command, usually .ATIS and then the call sign. So KBoston _ ATIS, DCA or Kennedy, and you can get that information wherever you are if you want to plan really early as well.
Gotcha. Yep, very good. All right, Jeremy, now you were saying that the stars coming into Kennedy, the descent instructions are going to sound a little different, right?
Yeah, we don't do descent via for Kennedy, at least. For if you're coming from Boston, you're most likely, if you're going to be RNAV, you're going to be on the Parch 3, which is pretty much identical to the Rover. You can pull up the Parch if you want.
Yep, we're working on it. Go ahead.
So I believe, what's the route? Cam, where do they come over? Is it over
Sandy Point?
That's what I thought. Okay, so you're gonna come over Sandy Point, and it's pretty easy. You just follow the chart, and Boston's gonna hand you over to New York, over Calverton, Charlie, at 12,250 knots, hopefully. They're pretty good at doing that. And then you'll be handed over to New York TRACON, and then from there, what happens most of the time, and this is what I do, is after Calverton, you're going to still fly direct to Rober. Now there are two options. You can fly the route towards Capit if we're landing 2-2, or you can fly direct Kennedy after Rober. Usually, what should happen before you even get the Rober is given like a heading. So what I do is I depart Rober heading 260 and the descent and destruction to make sure they cross at 9,000 or so. It says expect there. It's not a hard altitude, so that's why we can kind of fudge with it.
That's an
but yeah,
important point, though.
Yeah, and then after Rober, it just depends on the volume. If there's a lot of traffic, then you might get a few turns before you get pushed onto the localizer. If it's pretty early in the event, maybe, which isn't to say that there won't be a lot of traffic at the beginning of the event, but if it's lower traffic volume, then you'll probably be given maybe 1 or 2 headings off of Rober, and then there's up the final, and it's easy peasy that way. And then you just descend. There is a lot of you're coming in pretty high relative to how close you are to the airport. You're at 12,000. You need to descend down to 3,000 or so to intercept the localizer. So if you miss an instruction the first time, it's going to be harder for you to get down quick enough to intercept at a safe altitude. But there's that being said, it's not that difficult to do. Just make sure you're up on your game and stuff and listening.
Right, that's an important point. Is that when it's not a descend via, it's less automatic. It requires a little bit more interaction with the controllers, and that's what I think. It's important to just listen up for that call sign a little bit more extra. In the real world, they'll tell you a sterile cockpit below 10,000. A jet airliner crew isn't supposed to have any distractions in the cockpit. Now, obviously, in VATSIM, we're not that strict, especially those of us who live stream. But but certainly that's the time when you're in a tighter airspace. Certainly that's the time that you really do need to kind of minimize the distractions. Make sure you're listening to that radio. Every time you hear the controller start to talk, got to listen out. Oh, is that me? Nope. Okay, that's not me. Okay, good. And then next instruction. Okay, is that me? Okay, yeah, that's me. I need to be ready. So. And
I would say this is particularly critical after your handoff from Boston, because once you're approaching Calverton and New York TRACON has your tag, has your data block.
You're right in there. Yeah, there's not a lot of time.
Yeah, so you basically got to do what they say, or else you're gonna be delayed, and that's just how it's gonna be. You might be pushed around in line.
Right.
You want to pull up the Cameron 4 for DCA?
Yeah, let's do that real quick.
Cool.
And then I think we were talking about 2 that come in from the north and west that actually have to come over the N90. That people always wonder. It's like, why is the altitude so high? But yeah, we'll look at those.
Yeah, we could talk about that
too. Sure. The Cameron 4 coming at you. Go ahead.
Cameron 4 is super easy. Super easy. It's just a matter of following the instructions. And again, this is not a descend via. Everything is expected altitude. And you have the flight level 180 at Hogs or the lowest usable flight level, depending on the altimeter, and the 11,000 at Cameron. If we're landing 4s, which I don't think we will, but there's a small possibility. If we land 4s, that just means between Cameron and the airport, or actually, let me say this, between Cameron and your approach path, it's a lot shorter distance than if you were to go to any other part of the runway, part of the airport. So that being said, after Cameron, for a 4s configuration or 413 configuration, because they're similar, you're most likely going to be given a heading after Cameron, either by New York Center or by approach. And that's a fast, right?
Kind of the northwest there to get up there. Got it.
Exactly. And that's a pretty quick descent because you don't have a lot of space. Now, if we're going 31s, it's much simpler. After Cameron, lost comms is you go direct Deer Park, I believe, or you go direct the airport, one of the two. But what's going to happen is after Cameron, you're going to continue flying your present heading, or you'll be adjusted a few degrees to flight heading 040 because our controllers like nice round numbers.
So do pilots.
Yeah, exactly. so 040 after Cameron is typical, and then just step down descents until you're at a good altitude to turn and intercept the localizer. It's super easy on the 31s, and the 22s are pretty much the same, except instead of turning left on the 31s, you turn left and then left again to land on 22.
Go out further. Okay.
Yeah,
almost
pretty simple.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Very good.
Cameron, that's all I got for that.
Yeah, real quick.
Want to talk about Lindy?
Yeah, just the ones that, well, we'll bring up Lendy as an example, but the Kingston one is also is kind of the same.
They're
But
analogous.
yeah, exactly.
They come and do the Tracon at the same point, which is Landy. They're just from two different directions. And you probably won't be encountering this on Friday. However, if Washington chooses to do an offload route over Jerry's, possible. I don't think it's very likely though, at all. Regardless, I think it's good to talk about. The thing about Landy is that, like Rob said before, you come in like super high. You come in at 19, flight level 190, at 250 knots. 250 knots is the key point here, because once you're over Landy, you're in the Tracon. So we need you at 250 knots. It's really easy to come screaming over at flight level 190, like 300 plus knots, but like that just takes up more space, and we can't get you descended fast enough if you're going too quick. So on a 3-1s flow, typically with light traffic, after Landy, you're going to be given a heading to go south to miss the LaGuardia Airport. It does say after Landy, you proceed direct LaGuardia. However, if we're in the 31s flow, like Rob is drawing, you're going to come south. You're going to come south of Kennedy over the water, like over the New York Harbor
Well,
and south of Long Island.
chart's not to scale, remember?
Right, of course. Why would it be? But the gist of it is there. You're gonna turn.
Yeah.
You're gonna turn right after Landy, and then do a few left turns to intercept the localizer. Now, if we're on 13s or 4s, or if there's a lot of traffic down south in that area where we just drew, what you can do is continue flying direct LaGuardia, and after LaGuardia, just keep flying the same heading, basically. So flying like 130 or so, and you'll just be descended that way. And instead of left turns, you'll just be turning right.
Gotcha.
And yeah, super easy. For 2-2s, it's the same thing as 31s, except instead of turning left to join the 31 localizer, you keep flying and then do 2 left turns to join 22. 22s and 31s are similar.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, in other words, though, but the key point, though, is this, that because you're basically coming over the Tracon from the west side, they have you at this crazy, what seems like a crazy high altitude until you realize why they're doing it. So
it is a crazy high altitude, but you have to go above LaGuardia and Newark departures and Newark arrivals and a bunch of other things. So
very interesting stuff.
But you got to descend real quick, like from over there. That's the big point, and that's why we need you at 250.
The infamous slam dunk, right?
Exactly.
Or the crowbar approach. You toss the crowbar out the window and race it to the ground. Gotcha.
Precisely.
All right, Jared, we want to walk us through kind of the basic arrival flows that we'll expect into DCA.
Sure. Well, we actually we do a little bit of both of what we've already talked about. So, coming from Boston, we're expecting people probably to be on the Deal 3. That one is similar to the Roebuck, where you'll either get a descend via or an altitude first, and then get a descend via from Potomac. One of the things that you'll get from the Deal, though, is you actually talk to the Baltimore approach controller first, because you have to fly through his airspace, and then you talk to the Washington National controller. So if you talk to Chesapeake, which is Baltimore, first, they'll actually issue you the descend via, and they'll give you a landing direction. So since they're not working DCA, they can't assign you a runway. So you're going to hear something, Washington landing north. We already talked about the ATIS, but you can pretty much assume that that's runway 1. If they say landing south, you can pretty much assume that's runway 19. The Deal. Right. Go ahead.
No, I was just pointing out kind of the big Mickey Mouse head that is the Potomac Tracon.
Yeah, I call it the Mickey Mouse Tracon all the time.
For different reasons.
The Deal is the same way, whether you're north or south. It has a fix and then a heading off of that fix, and you can expect radar vectors to final approach course. So the same deal. Don't turn direct to the first fix in the approach. Right. The arrivals coming from New York are going to be on a little bit of a different arrival, and that one's the Clipper.
All right, get that in front of me, but you can go ahead and start.
And the Clipper's a little bit different because it comes straight from New York, also to the Baltimore approach controller first, and New York just issues a hard crossing. So New York will issue Trish at 1-2000, and then they're going to hand you off to Chesapeake. Chesapeake will talk to you for a little while until you get over Baltimore, but they're going to give you one more crossing restriction, and that's Baltimore at 10,250 knots. And then you're going to hear the same thing: Washington landing north, Washington landing south. Once you get over to Baltimore, the same thing's going to happen. They're going to hand you off to Mount Vernon, which is DCA's approach, and you'll follow that path. And again, expect radar vectors to the final approach course.
Right. So again, leave that discontinuity in there. You're not supposed to turn from there onto your approach until you're told you're going to cut the aircraft ahead off. That's been issued the same thing.
And if we're in south ops, obviously the final or the downwind leg there that you're kind of pointing at is a little off skewed because you're coming down the river and then you have to make that turn onto 19. Whereas if we're landing north, we're landing runway 1, then it's a little bit more of a straight shot north. So
gotcha.
You don't have all that prohibited airspace.
Oh yeah. We'll touch on that, I think, more when we get into the approaches.
Yep.
But actually, I tell you what, since we are on that topic, let's go ahead and talk about that river visual into 19. Henry, what's kind of talk us through? I know we don't really know if we're going to be in north flow or south flow on Friday just yet, but I guess the first topic is how DCA relies very heavily on these charted visual approach procedures. So kind of give us the basic rundown on how those work.
Yeah, so as we talked about, DCA really has one strip that we use, runway 1, runway 19. But yeah, DCA uses charted visuals, so visual approaches that have charts, not just straight in visuals a lot.
Right.
And
most
it's not,
notably, just to kind of clarify, these aren't VFR procedures. These are for IFR arrivals, but it's an IFR arrival that relies on visual landmarks and visual references.
Yeah, so most notably, you have the Mount Vernon visual coming from when you're landing north and landing runway 1, and the famous river visual from the south. So that one's a fun one. Same with the Mount Vernon visual. They're both really fun approaches. And what's fun is that if we're in VMC, so visual conditions, you will most likely be assigned either the Mount Vernon if you're in north or the river visual if you're in south, which is pretty cool.
And because it's a visual thing, that clearance kind of starts a little differently than what you're used to hearing for like a vector to an ILS. So first of all, talk us through that.
Yeah, so obviously you'll be coming on the downwind, and the Mount Vernon visual, you'll most likely be turned on a base, so perpendicular to the final approach course. And then once you're on that base, the controller might turn you more to an intercept heading, so more towards the field, or not. And they'll ask you to report basically anything that's on this chart in sight. So you can report the Potomac River in sight. You can report Mount Vernon in sight. You can report the Woodrow Wilson Bridge. Anything there, including the airport, any of those count, and then they'll clear you for the Mount Vernon visual approach.
Right. Now, and in practice, though, I think you guys tend to use the river because that's kind of the most discernible across the sim platforms, right?
Yeah, so the river is going to be there for everyone. It's a big thing that it's hard to miss unless it's really cloudy.
And if I can just point out one other thing you might hear if we're running these charted visuals is, point out to the traffic, and then you might hear the phrase "follow that traffic," which also clears you for the river visual. So a lot of pilots aren't used to hearing that from air traffic control. They just, excuse me. But when we have you all lined up, follow him.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, which I think, and this is my opinion, it's difficult because I think it's easy when you're in a sim and you're panning the view around, especially, to lose sight of that aircraft that you just had. So, and the sim's draw distance is kind of a factor with that too and whatnot. But yeah, so that's important to kind of note that you might get that traffic point out and then you follow the aircraft. But a lot of times it is indeed the river, which is a fairly discernible landmark, regardless of which sim that you're flying.
And that's where that situational awareness really helps you out.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, one more thing.
And then once you're cleared on the approach, you're kind of just you're bound by the visual references and in case of here the DME reference, and your altitude management really becomes on you at that point, right?
Yeah. you have these recommended altitudes. You can cross Baden, which is the final approach fix for the ILS runway 1
Mhm.
at is 1,600 is recommended, but since it's not an ILS approach, you can really do whatever you want once you're cleared for the visual. And also, with the Mount Vernon visual, since it's mainly a straight in, you've got those curves at the end following the river. You can actually use the localizer, and it's on the chart. You may
Right.
even be asked to intercept the localizer. It is
Right.
completely legal for the controller to tell you to intercept the localizer, then report something in sight, and then they'll clear you for the visual approach.
Right.
But yeah, in north, when you're landing runway 1, you may also be assigned the ILS, and the ILS,
Gotcha.
straightforward ILS, nothing too big
Right.
about that.
Well, the other thing too is like when when you're told to expect the river visual runway 1, or the ATIS says to expect the river visual runway 1, it's not a bad idea to just set your plane up as though you're flying the ILS, because even if you aren't going to be given a 30-degree intercept to the localizer, you're going to be given that different phraseology, report the river in sight and so forth. Still having that ILS in front of you is real helpful as far as being able to just join that, just kind of give you those that additional guidance. All right, very good. And then Henry, did you want to talk us through? Again, we don't know whether we're going to be on the river visual to I'm sorry, the Mount Vernon visual to runway 1, or the very tricky Mount Vernon. I'm sorry, I'm getting them confused. The Mount Vernon visual to runway 1, which is the more or less straight in one, but then we've got this real tricky river visual to runway 19 or runway 19er. That tends to be the one that everyone loves to do because it's such a challenge. So talk us through that.
Yeah, so runway 19 South Ops, like we talked about, the deal or the clipper will bring you on a downwind that's not basically a 180-degree offset from the final approach course. So like runway 1, it'd be around 190, but since we're landing 19, it's a very offset course. It's gonna be something like a 327 heading, I think it is 330. So you'll be coming in there basically parallel to the river. The Potomac River, same river that you follow for the Mount Vernon visual.
Right.
Like the Mount Vernon, you'll be turned on a base most likely. And then it's very similar. You'll be told or to report the river, anything on this chart, again, in sight. And once you have it in sight, they'll clear you for the river visual runway 19. And what's fun about the river visual is it's you literally follow the river, hence its name. There's no, I mean, obviously it's the same. Your altitude management is on you, just like the Mount
Right.
Vernon visual, but it's just you follow that river in. It's very visual, obviously. It's for IFR aircraft, and then at the end, you've got these two prohibited areas, which is where the White House is, and P-56A White House. You've got the Capitol and Washington Monument, and then P-56B is the Naval Observatory, and I think.
Yep.
So you cannot fly in those areas, and it's really tricky because if you see that the river visual, the Potomac River goes really up close to P-56A, and
Yep.
that's the reason why you can't come straight in for runway 19. So you have to come follow that river and then make a really sharp right turn at the end to get lined up with the runway. So it gets really tricky, and if you're too high or too low, it can get all messed up.
Yep. Yeah. This last turn, it's not charted, but it's probably generally around 400 feet above ground level. It's a very, very late turn. What I have definitely seen, and we mentioned earlier, was folks will start making their way down the river, and all of a sudden they see this runway up ahead, and they're like, "Oh, okay, cool, I've got it. I'm all set." And then they follow that straight in, and then the controller's asking them, "Hey, are you lined up for 15 or 19er?" And then they're like, "Huh?" And so there's either this mad dash scramble to adjust at the last second, or there's the go around, or there's suddenly being re-cleared to land on a different runway than you thought you were landing on. So the key thing with this river visual, for those who haven't done it before, Just keep over the water no matter what happens. Stay over the water until the very last second. The last set of double bridges is where you finally make that turn because, again, it's real easy to be fooled at this left bend right around where the reservoir is. You look straight ahead and you see that runway and you think, oh, this is okay. It's working out just like I expected it to, and it's not at all the correct. It's not at all the correct. It's not at all working out.
Exactly. And when we're departing runway 15 and it can get all messy if you have someone land and so you really gotta pay attention, and it's something I've done before when I was first when I first started flying. I've definitely, like, when I knew nothing really, I would go and land 15.
Yep, it's a very difficult approach. It's one of the probably the most, I would say top 3 for sure. I almost call it the most difficult commercial airliner approach in the country. It may be close to San Diego's Loc 27 or maybe a couple of other ones, but this is definitely one of the more tricky ones that you'll find commonly flown in the U.S. by commercial airliners. So
and
worth a look at before you fly it on Friday if you haven't done it before.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing to note is if it's cloudy and we can't run the river visual, because if you scroll down a bit, you've got weather minimums. I'm not sure where it is, but weather minimums, 3,500 foot ceiling and 3-mile visibility. So if it's if the weather is worse than that, we have to run either the LDA Zulu or Yankee runway 19 or the RNAV, and there's no ILS. That's the reason being you have that restricted airspace, so you can't fly straight in. So you have all these interesting approaches. If it's really cloudy, the approach with the lowest minimums is going to be the RNAV RNP, which, just like a normal approach, a normal RNAV, you'll be cleared direct one of these fixes and cleared for the RNAV. It basically is the river visual, but just RNAV.
Yeah, and that's an important point. Like we were saying, you can kind of tune the ILS runway 1 as a sanity check, as a means to get your aircraft to kind of point you in the right direction. This is a way you can get the aircraft to kind of point you in the right direction to the river visual, because it doesn't line up 100% perfectly with the altitudes, but it's darn close. It is essentially the same path. So it's as a way to you might even call it cheating, but it's not even really cheating to use all of the navigation information that you have available to you in order to get you pointed in the right direction. So
yeah, exactly. And if you're assigned the LDA Zulus, the one we usually use, it's you actually fly it. It's a localizer that you fly in, but then obviously, since it's a localizer, you can't turn, so you actually have to take over the plane and make that sharp right turn in, just like
so it's a very, very offset localizer with a very, very sharp turn at the end of it.
Yep.
Very good. Okay. That's kind of, I think those are the kind of the main overviews to the approaches into DCA. Of course, we could probably do a whole show, an hour long, just on DCA, just because it's so tricky and so fun. But let's take a break. Let's give Henry a break from talking, and let's move back up to the north and let Jeremy talk about the approaches into Kennedy. Now, of course, we're expecting to be kind of in that 3-1 flow, but just in case we're not, Jeremy, talk us through what the other option might be.
Well, so this is how I categorize Kennedy. You have the 3 1s, 2 2s, and 4s. Those are all just ILS approaches with RNAV equivalents, and it's pretty straightforward. And then you have the 13s. Which one do you want to talk about first?
Well, let's look at the 13s, even though it's not going to be, probably used, or at least, we kind of think it might not be used. But let's look at the 1 to 13 that you guys
we use RNAV
generally
Zulu.
like to use. Yeah, trying to get kind of just a little point and compare here. RNAV Zulu.
Can you bring up the? I don't think we use the VOR anymore.
Don't use it at all.
RNAV.
It's an interesting one to kind of look at.
It's the same as it's the replacement, or it's being replaced by. Yeah, here we go.
Gotcha.
This is the RNAV Zulu left. People used to call it the Canarsie approach because it used to be there's also there are various other names for it, but this is the gist of it. You're gonna come in, like I said before, you're gonna come in over Cameron. You're gonna turn left. You're gonna go maybe direct assault, maybe not, but in general, we're gonna get you towards assault, And once you hit a salt, it's 3,000. And you can see the parsing restriction at a below 210, 210 knots. So the 3,000 point is very important. And what you're going to do is you're going to follow a sort of 040. It says 045 heading to stay over the water as much as possible because we don't want our residents in Brooklyn and Queens to get mad at us. So you're going to stay over the water as much as possible, and then you're going to follow lead-in lights after whatever it says on the chart. But you're going to be following it for as long as possible, and then you're going to veer right and descend real quick, and it's going to look like you're crashing your plane, but just at the very last minute, if you pull up and stabilize your wings and land on the runway, then everything's good.
Gotcha. So
but
this
certainly
one might be up there with that runway 19er. It's just maybe not used as often. But yeah, in addition to the noise abatement of Brooklyn, I mean, you also have this other airport up here, and you've got this other airport down here that you're avoiding traffic from as well. So
yeah, and just as you have to turn right at the last minute for the river visual, you have to turn right at the last minute here, and it's going to feel like you're going to crash your plane, but hopefully you won't.
Yes.
And if you don't feel like it's going to be a successful landing, then go around. Like
sure, yeah, absolutely.
Operate safely. But yeah, that's the 13s flow, and that's the only thing we can do with the 13s. The other option is if it's really bad, then we kind of have to shut down the airspace and go on the ILS, which is still a right turn, but it just brings you out over Manhattan, basically.
Gotcha. Yep. So there's
it
the ILS.
screws up
just
everything,
for
so we
comparison.
don't
It does. Yeah, because it limits the amount of flow you can have at the other airports, right?
It's terrible.
Yeah.
So let's bring up what do you have open?
Yeah, so this is the
or
old one,
something?
the old VOR one, which is kind of the same thing, except it's almost a hybrid VOR and a hybrid like charted visual. It seems to me.
Yeah.
Like,
you can also use GPS on this one too.
Right.
But yeah.
But let's look at the 3-1s, since those are kind of what we think are going to be, and the rest of the approaches, like you said, are fairly straightforward ILSs. But
yeah, so 3-1s are pretty easy. So you're going to be shot off from, if you're coming in from Lendy, you're going to be coming in from the northwest, like I said before, and you're going to be given a pretty sharp left turn to kind of merge with the Cameron traffic from the southwest as well. And all of those merges will kind of align into a 040 heading flow. You can see on this chart, you can see the chant intersection on the bottom. This is basically you're probably not going to be given chant because we don't give chant. We just vector to intercept. But the flow is essentially the same. You're going to be given something along 040, and you're going to turn left, and you're going to intercept the localizer and then descend. It's an ILS. It's super easy. If you're coming in from the north, you're probably going to be using the right side of the airport. But if you use the left side, it's the exact same, except it's just a right turn. So you follow the Deer Park 229 radial and turn right to intercept the localizer. But you'll be given vectors. Make sure you're listening, but it's pretty much a box. Like you're just going to be given a box.
Right. Yeah.
And it's
Very
90
good.
degrees.
Yeah,
it's very easy.
It's easy to see why this is the kind of the preferred flow weather-wise, just because you guys have so much more space to work with down here that you can vector aircraft onto parallel finals like we've talked about in some of these other panels.
I do want to say, similar to our departure, which I assume Rob will have us talking about in a little bit, but but just like our departures, if you go around on the 31s, because Newark is off, if in like to the northwest and LaGuardia is to the northeast, have to turn left. And you can see this on the missed approach section of the chart. Like you have to turn left. There's no other option. So if you do go around, don't fly towards Manhattan because it's possible that you'll hit a building, and it's possible you might hit another aircraft. So turning left is your best bet. Get out over the water, and then climb.
Left turn. Yep, it's all up there.
Yeah.
Yep, very good. Okay, yep, but excellent point. Make sure you're prepared for that. The old adage: if you're not prepared to fly the mist, you're not prepared to fly the approach, right?
So much. Yeah, but it's all pretty straightforward, and the 2-2s are similar to the 3-1s. I will say I think it's the 2-2 left localizer is offset from the runway itself, so it looks like you're going to miss the runway, but you won't, as long as you fly the approach correctly.
Which one is that?
And
the
also,
left one you said?
The 2-2 left and right are both a little bit offset. 2-2 left a little bit more. It's not called an offset approach because it doesn't meet the criteria, but it just looks a little wonky, like in the sim. But that's just how it is. They just need that a little bit of extra room for LaGuardia, I guess. And 4s is simple. 4s is simple. You just send and
again coming over the water where you got that space. Yep.
Easy.
Very cool. Yep. No, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just want to make sure we get to all the stuff that we want to get to tonight. Cameron, you said that The approaches into Boston are more or less straightforward, but are there any that you want to look at, or?
Yeah, I mean, they're more so straightforward. We usually defeat the most aircraft is the ILS, so any ILS approach you can expect. Kind of the important thing is once you're on the approach, you may still get speed assignments, right? So you have to manage, the flow into the arrival. So if you want to pull up 3-3 left, possibly. So a couple things you might hear is, if you're more than 15 miles route, you might get 210 knots assigned to keep you a little bit faster. Then you might be slowed to 190 knots. And then the most common phrase you'll hear is probably 170 knots to at least an Nimoy or whatever the final approach fix would be. And we really need to keep you on those speeds to help get the maximum capacity that we can. And really, the ILS is the best rate for us.
Gotcha. And then once you're within, the final approach fix, or normally around 5 miles, is pretty much that's where you're released from the speed restrictions to your final approach speed and get your aircraft configured and slowed down and all that stuff.
Yeah, and
170
this approach
until 5 is, or 170 until 5, or 170 to the final approach fix is real common. So.
Yeah, if we are in this approach, you might have a depart 27 right in front of you, which is really cool to see as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I love this crossing. I love working BWI, and as I'm a Washington tower controller, and I love working BWI for that very reason. We get the arrivals on 3-3 left for those that have sims that have 3-3 left, that is.
Yeah.
And we get the departures going on 2-8. It's like a beautifully orchestrated ballet, and I know that you in Boston have that real similar configuration with the runways, the arrival and departure runways that cross. So it's I know that from experience that it's a lot of fun to work that as a tower controller.
Yeah.
All right, very good. Why don't we stay with you, Cameron, and talk about the ground operations at Boston? And we did touch on them at the very beginning. We were talking about all the different runway crossings that you have to get, but just kind of give us a brief overview of the layout of the airport and some of the challenges that it involves.
Yeah, so we did touch on it. So really, the crossing runways, right? So just to get out, for instance, 3-3 left, it's 3 runways you have to cross. Really, as the ground controller, the whole sequence has to happen prior to 4 left, to way over there, still by the terminal. Sequencing departures so that they're on different departure procedures. So that's really a common place where you need to pay attention. You might get held short of Charlie. Don't make the right turn onto Charlie. Hold short taxiway Charlie. It means to hold short the taxiway, not turn onto it. But then you cross 2 runways. Usually 4 left and 4 right, and the 3-3 config would be inactive. But the most important hold short would be hold short runway 27.
Yeah, because that's where your
either
arrivals are
for
coming in.
arrivals.
Yeah.
Yep. And you need to read that back. And then usually you'll be given monitor tower, so don't change frequencies and call them. They will call you, so monitor the next frequency.
Yep, very important distinction. Yeah, that's the one that we've mentioned it a couple times in these panels before, but I don't think we mentioned it every time. But yeah, when you get that instruction, monitor tower, change to the frequency, but don't call them, they'll call you.
Nope. Exactly.
Right, very good. Okay. The insane number of runways that you have to cross to get to your departure runways has always kind of struck me at Boston. So easy to see where you kind of end up with some of those cues for departure sometimes, even when you're trying your best to get them out efficiently. So.
Yep.
All right, very good. Ground operations at Kennedy. I know, Jeremy, you got a lot more room to work with there, and you got those parallel taxiways all the way around. So I think that for the most part, Kennedy is a little less space challenged, but I think the big thing is just listening out for all the different runway or the taxiway names, right?
Yeah, just make sure you're listening. That's really all it takes. Alpha is clockwise, Bravo is counterclockwise. So left and right turns, depending on where you are in the airport, are really important. You don't want to be nose to nose with any aircraft. So make sure you're listening, especially coming out of the gate.
Right.
If you're going to 2-2, if you're coming out of the gate, it'll probably, it could depend where you are. It could be a left or a right on Alpha, depending on, what part of the airport you're coming from. But yeah, Alpha is always clockwise. Bravo is always counterclockwise. Yeah.
Gotcha. And the area that I hear like a lot of confusion is where you have Alpha and Delta, and then you have Delta Alpha, And Delta
It's
Bravo and
crazy.
Bravo.
And there are scenery issues over there too.
Are there? Yeah.
Yeah. So if like, let's take for instance, if you're going to 22 right, and let's say you're
Mhm.
coming from Terminal 4 where the tower is. So what I do is I turn left on Bravo and I give Echo to cross 31 right. You know what I'm talking, coming out of hotel, for instance.
Gotcha.
Um,
Trying to get the
and
drawing tool up
what
here. Go ahead.
yeah, what happens is Echo should get you across 31 right. However, depending on your scenery, it might not appear that way.
Mm.
The idea is to have you straight across from Bravo, transition onto Echo / Zulu Alpha. It's Zulu Alpha for like half a second, cross 31 right, and then rejoin Echo. But it's just super confusing over there, especially with scenery issues. But just follow your chart, and
Yeah.
and if you have a problem, hold short of the problem area and contact the ground controller. Like,
Gotcha.
figure it
I
out.
think that's a good key point is that the controllers are going to work off of what's current, regardless of what you have in your sim, because there's so many different sim platforms and so many different freeware scenery add-ons, payware scenery add-ons, that there's literally dozens of different versions of this airport that are usable on VATSIM, and the controllers really don't know which. They can guess sometimes based on your aircraft type, right? But for the most part, the controllers don't really know which sim you have, and they certainly don't know which scenery you have or don't have installed. So
All right.
they're going to give you
Especially with
instructions based on,
construction.
and they're going to give you instructions based on what's on this chart, and it's kind of on you as the pilot to figure out what's in your sim and how that matches up with what's on the chart. So just an important thing to keep in mind, and good to know that corner of the airport is particularly problematic. So
Oh, and I will say, if you're landing on 4 right,
Mhm.
wherever you turn left off the runway, usually because it gets so the taxiways are so close and their intersections pretty close to each other over there. What I do is usually it's not a problem if you just turn left off the runway because you don't have any other option. Like, please don't turn right. Turn left off the runway and
Splash.
make your way to hold short of either Yankee or 22 right.
Yeah.
You won't be causing any issues if you do that.
Yeah, just keep rolling until you have something you have to hold short of, because obviously
Yeah.
there's nowhere else you can stop. So
Yeah, because you see at Fox Bravo that comes off right after Foxtrot, you can go right onto continue onto Fox Bravo, or you can turn left to Foxtrot Alpha. Sometimes people like to stop there, and it's like your tail's gonna be over the runway. Just make a choice. I mean, you prefer
right.
if you go Foxtrot Alpha, it's fewer runway crossings, like continue the left turn. But if you come to that split and you don't know what to do, pick one and go with
Go
it, and then
somewhere,
we'll
right?
contact you.
Don't just stay
Yeah,
there. Yeah,
don't
important.
get your tail in the runway.
Important. And Jared, I think you probably have similar advice for landing at DCA, wouldn't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Let's get the diagram up in front of us again. DCA. I think the theme of DCA is space limited. So talk us through some of the specific challenges we have here.
Well, definitely, and you've heard me say it probably to a ton of ground students, but their number one priority, especially at Washington National, is keep the runway exits clear.
Yeah.
And that will happen where if someone stops and takes a while short of Juliet, and takes a while to contact ground, and then somebody else lands and tries to exit off, the same taxiway, and then pretty soon they're on the runway and we can't land anybody. So,
Mhm.
Getting off the runway, getting over to ground, and either making a turn onto Juliet. Sometimes tower will tell you to do that, or ground will give you your instructions real quick. But yeah, just being kind of quick on your feet when you land at DCA will definitely help us out.
Yep. Very good. And then I know that you were talking about some of the taxi out issues where pilots tend to mix up Kilo and Juliet. So
Sure. You're looking at the FAA one, so it's that thin black line is actually the movement area, or defines the movement area there. So, at most U.S. airports, at least on VATSIM, the movement area is not controlled. So we don't care what you do in there. Now there are some gates at the very end of those pylons that we'll have to push back onto Kilo. We'll get you to call us for pushback from those. But Kilo is that taxiway that just spans the non-movement area there,
right.
and so we'll use that one to kind of keep aircraft off of Juliet, really, because we need that for people exiting the runway.
Mhm.
So that one's real easy to get. There's no grass in between. It's just some lines on the concrete. So that one's easy to get confused.
Right. Yeah, you were saying a lot of people, when they taxi out, they don't realize that they figure they're still on the ramp there, so they taxi out past it and then realize that they've wound up on Juliet. So
Yep.
important point to kind of realize that Kilo is the one that does literally run right past the edge, and like you said, right past the edge of these piers.
Yep, exactly.
And then another important point, it's not so important because I think a lot of the sims have caught up now, but I think Kilo 5 is still called Delta in a lot of these sims. So you pass a sign that says Delta, that is actually where Kilo 5 is. And we use Kilo 5, Juliet to get you down there a lot. So it's one that a lot of folks miss because a lot of the signs do still say Delta.
One other weird thing, I don't know if you want to talk about at DCA, is when we're having traffic management initiatives, or we might be called for release to Boston or something. We have some hold blocks at the either end of these runways, and you might get told to go into the hold bay, and so that's right down there next to runway 1, and there's space for about 3 or 4 airplanes down there, depending on how big everybody is.
Right.
And we might use that to sequence you. We might use that also to to hold you until we have your release. So that's something that VATSIM pilots aren't used to hearing a lot of.
Gotcha. Yep. Good point. All right. Very good. Real quick, guys, we want to branch into talking about the departures, and I think because we're going to our demo flight tonight, it's going to have our departure out of DCA. I think we'll hold you for last there, Henry. But Cameron, let's go ahead back up to Boston and talk about the departures from Logan, the typical ones that we'll see on Friday.
Yeah, so the kind of cool typical ones, unfortunately, everything going to the southwest would be the SOX. I believe it's now 6 departure. So it goes down over the Long Island Sound area. But this is valid for all of our runways that we can depart off of. So for you're probably going to look at 27 in this case.
And I'll point out real quick, just because it is Valentine's Day, it is kind of shaped like a heart.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah. So yeah, say we're departing runway 27. So it's you fly out runway heading, and then you intercept a 237 course to the RNAV fix Kira, and then you resume down to Colin, and then down to SOX. What's really important is in your clearance, you'll get the instruction to climb via SID.
Mm-hmm.
And so, climb via the standard instrument departure, not climb to your final altitude. It's climb to that altitude there. It's 5,000 feet. So that is really important. You need to level off at 5,000 until the departure controller gives you some other instruction. It is common, people think, checking in, climbing 14,000 for, the flight levels. Well, you're not climbing via the departure. It's 5,000. So
right.
that's
Yeah.
really
And again,
important.
I think that's another symptom of pilots who are used to having followed tutorials for setting up the PMDG aircraft or whatever in a non-multiplayer environment where someone might have said, okay, here's where you set the altitude, and you just set that to your cruise. No, you don't. You set that to what's in your departure procedure only, and you don't raise it until you get cleared higher. So that's, again, another common one for pilots coming into VATSIM from a single-player environment. So,
the most troubling on this departure out of Boston is if we do depart 2-2s, which I don't think we will, but that first point there, TJ, is pretty common that people miss. Again, it's, runway heading, but you have to intercept the 144 course to the point TJ. It is a left turn out. It's not straight. And then
So this is a departure where you aren't waiting to be told to turn, right? You are cleared to follow this path, and the narrative on the following page basically tells you that. You're nowhere on this page does it say expect radar vectors. It says climb on this heading, then direct to there, then direct to there, then direct to there, so on, so forth and so forth. So you're not waiting for a controller to give you a vector on any of this stuff. If you're cleared on the SOC 6, you're cleared to follow this path, period. It's very different than a radar vector departure, and we'll talk more about the implications of that at the Reagan National ones.
Yep.
All right, good. And I think pretty much the other major departures out of Boston all kind of follow that same pattern, right?
Yeah, so they're just different regional gates. So we have departures. Gotcha. This is the southwest. We have southeast,
but the
east,
spider-looking thing off of the runways looks pretty similar in all of them. Yeah, gotcha. Yep. All right, Jeremy, anything to touch on real quick at New York with departures? No, the
Uh,
Kennedy.
yeah, yeah. Like I said earlier, if we're running the 31s, it's going to be score 4 departure or Kennedy 5. But let's do the score 4 because it's easier.
Gotcha. Good. ahead.
The score 4 is the 3-1 departure. Like this is what you take if you're departing 3-1. If you're going to the south, if you're going via Robbinsville or Dixie or White, you're going to be on Ranger transition, which means a left turn, but not a crazy left turn. Still crazy left turn. If you're going to anywhere else, if you're going to the north, to the east, to the west, you're going to be taking a Yankee transition, which is just you turn left and you continue turning left up
And
to
then
Canarsie.
eventually they get you going up to the northeast like that.
Yeah, and then the key point is you're going to get radar vectors after all of these.
Gotcha.
Most of the time, you're not even going to make it to Yankee, and you're not even going to make it to Ranger. Once you're past Canarsie and turned, if you're on the, let's talk about Yankee. If you're past Canarsie, you're south over the water. If you're above 1500, you're going to be moved. So you'll be given headings. You'll probably be given something like a 050 towards Merritt, just to get you pointed north, and then climb to 11 or 17, depending on who's
Gotcha.
on.
So
and
this
then
is
send you
actually
off.
kind of interesting in that it's a lot of the departures that we talk about on these panels, they fall into one of three categories. They're either completely radar vectored, or they're completely pilot nav, or they're a hybrid. And most of the hybrids they start off as radar vectored and then end in a pilot nav. And this is kind of the opposite. It starts off pilot nav and then radar vector. So it is a little unique in that regard.
Yeah, Kennedy's a special place. But yeah,
that's not the word I was going to use, but okay.
That's the gist of that's just
Yeah.
the score.
Yeah.
That being said, I will say the score is probably the easiest departure to handle. You just have to make sure to turn left. It's not
Yeah.
it's not
It
technically
starts
difficult,
off
but you just
very
have to make
much
sure you do
like a just follow the magenta line kind of departure, and then you just have to wait and listen for the controller to give you those next turns.
Yeah, but it's really easy to just keep flying the runway heading, and then
Yeah.
we have a whole other then we have to get in the hotline,
Right.
and it's like
Yeah,
let's
sure,
pull up the Kennedy 5.
Sure.
So the Kennedy 5, if you notice on the first page, it's much more messy, but let's focus on coming off the 3-1s. You can see the similar upside down Y formation, the left turn off of 3-1s. It's similar to the score, except this is just using radials and other fancy other stuff that doesn't include satellites. So here you're going to be given, if you're going to the south, instead of taking the Ranger transition, you're going to be given the Breezy Point climb. If you're taking the, if you're going anywhere else, is similar to the Yankee transition. It's the Canarsie climb. This
Gotcha.
it's just left
almost
turns,
different terminology for the same exact thing, basically.
pretty much. They're just climbs instead of transitions. If
Gotcha.
we're going off the 4s, then everything is going to be going off of it's going to be verbalized as a 100 heading, but it's a 099 heading because the magnetic variation has changed.
Okay.
It's going to be basically runway 4 left, or fly runway, correction, fly heading 100, the wind, runway 4 left, clear for takeoff.
Gotcha.
So that's a right turn heading 100. That one's super easy. For the 13s, depending on where you're going, you're going to be given either a 185, a 170, blah, blah. You're going to be given a heading
Okay.
to kind of get you in the general direction of where you need to go, and then a few other turns to get you exactly where you need to exit the TRACON. And then finally, for the 2-2s, it's just going to be runway heading, unless it's past 10 p.m. Then you're going to be getting the gateway climb, which is just a stupid right turn to avoid the rich people over south of the island. But it is what it is. It's for noise abatement. But
Hey, you're not one of those.
easy.
You don't live in that neighborhood.
I don't.
Okay.
Luckily. So,
I was just
apologies
kind of the
to
way
all
you
those-
said it kind of led me to believe that maybe
apologies
that's
to all
not
those
where you
people who
live.
live in that very nice part of Queens, but you know what I mean. That's there for a reason. But it's off of 2-2s. It's a runway heading. You're not going to disturb any virtual people. And that one's the
Good.
easiest.
Right.
Yeah. And
Right.
lastly, before you exit it, you see the Idlewild climb. This is if you're a prop. If you're a prop
gotcha.
going south, you'll be turning left. But if you're a prop going anywhere else off 31s, you can take the Idlewild climb. You can see the crossing restriction, and it's very rare because props don't usually come out of Kennedy. But if you do happen to come out of Kennedy off of 3-1 right, and you're going anywhere else but south, in this particular case, then you'll take the
It's
Idlewild
almost
climb.
like this is what they put you on just to keep you out of the way of the jets. This is just like
we
off
have
into
to.
nowhere. Yeah, off into nowhere, so that we can just get you out of the way quickly.
Yeah, that's that. And
All right, very
you'll
good.
be taking either one of those, either the Kennedy 5 or the Score 4, depending on the configuration on Friday. You won't be taking the Ds 5 because that's not for DCA traffic.
Gotcha.
Boston.
All right, very good. We are doing well on time, actually. So, Henry, why don't you wrap us up by talking about the departures out of Reagan?
Yeah. Okay. So similar to Kennedy, uh, Washington also has some fun departures. You can pull up either the Doctor or the Suki. Those are the main ones you're going to be taking to Kennedy,
Yeah.
or Boston.
And
And
I'm
you
actually
can
going to
also
pull
pull
up
up the
the national
National.
just to have it for comparison. Yep, go ahead.
All right, so yeah, let's look at the Doctor. So if we're in South Ops, it's pretty simple. You'll probably depart runway 19, and then just fly straight out. It's once again just an RNAV departure, so you follow your magenta line, and then you turn. You'll be given climb via SID. So you follow those restrictions that you see on the chart, and once again, the top altitude is 5,000, so you can't climb any higher than 5 unless you're cleared higher. But yeah, that's what you're gonna get if you're in
It's
South.
this
Like,
North Flow one that tends to be the interesting one, though. And tell us why.
yeah, yeah. So if you're departing runway 1, just like the river visual when you have to avoid P56, the restricted area. If you're departing runway 1, you also have to avoid P56. So similar to Kennedy, it's that really sharp left turn right after departure. So pretty much as soon as you're airborne, um, you make a
I
quick
love some of
left
the
turn
language
to
on
avoid
this.
it. Yeah, exactly.
Expeditious intercept. What's the one? Oh, here it is. As soon as practical. In other words,
Exactly.
don't wait to be told. When you get your wheels up, turn left immediately. We'll demonstrate that. We're gonna actually boot up the working title CJ4
The same
for
goes
Flight
for
Sim
Kennedy on
2020.
the scores, by the way.
Yeah,
Like
it's
it's
pretty similar.
yeah.
But yeah, this is the one you can lose your well. I mean, I guess you technically can lose your license for any of those pilot deviations if they're severe enough. But this is the one that you can more quickly get yourself in real trouble for.
You get
Yeah,
to see the
fly
nice
fly
helicopters.
fly a little too far north, and you might see some fighter jets off your wing.
Yeah.
Nice conversation with the Secret Service.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I have a number for you to call, and you probably want to get a lawyer as well. All right, very
Yeah,
good. And it's important to note that every single
every single
IFR
depart.
departure, every single IFR departure has this exact same from DCA at least. Every single IFR departure from DCA has this exact same language in one form or another. Immediate left, expeditious intercept as soon as practical. So it's on every single one, and we pulled up even the radar vector departure, which is you kind of think of it as, well, it's radar vector, so the controller's going to tell me when to turn. Well, yeah, after you do this one. And you
Exactly.
don't wait to be told to do that one.
Yeah, sometimes you may even be told to fly northwest over the river is something you can be
Right.
told, or be given 320 heading. But no matter what you're given, um, you're going to be making that left turn off of runway 1. So it's just really important to do that, or else,
Yeah,
you
indeed.
know.
Indeed. And
Just keep in
if
mind,
there's
if you're over the river, you're safe.
Yeah,
Yes.
right. If you're over water, you're good. Now, I will say that there's one particular a-hole controller who works DCA Tower who likes to mock people on his live stream for messing that up. He won't be working on Friday, so you guys are safe from
Aw.
that.
Aw.
Yeah, no, my wife and I are traveling for a little weekend getaway, so that unfortunately takes precedence, and that was my trade-off for actually doing the show on Valentine's Day, so I can't get out of that one.
Uh,
But anyway, I'll be living vicariously. I'll probably be down at the condo just watching you guys on VATScan or VATSpy or whatever whatever I'm supposed to be not watching. All right, very good, guys. I appreciate all the great information. Looking forward to a great event on Friday. We'll go around the room one last time just to get any closing remarks in case there's anything that I missed that you want to hit on real quick. So, Cameron, do you have anything that you want to add?
yeah, no, I mean, I just want to, say thanks, Rob, for putting these on. Hopefully they're reaching the right audience. People are paying attention to them, and takeaways, make it a better event. That's why we're devoting this time as controllers to come and talk about our airspaces, and hopefully the
very good.
pilots can pay attention and make the event go smoothly. So they really look forward to it.
Yep, hope so. We'll keep our fingers crossed. Even though, like I said, I won't be participating in person. I'll be picking in to the best of my ability. Jeremy, any closing thoughts?
Just for a traffic management side, look where people are flying before you start flying. If there are a million people going, well, if there are like 30 people going from Kennedy to Boston or Boston to Kennedy, maybe pick a different route.
Good point. Yeah.
Yeah, these routes get saturated really easily, and the airports do as well. So just be mindful of that, and also be mindful that these are metropolitan areas that have multiple reliever airports, and they'll probably have some semblance of staffing. So you always
Gotcha.
have alternate.
Yeah. Matter of fact, I mean, this is I've got VATSpy up on the screen, and you can use this tool. You can even see it right now, even just on a random Monday on Valentine's Day. You got 8 on the ground at Boston getting ready to depart. You got 10 at Kennedy, 4 at LaGuardia. So, yeah, I mean, obviously the whole purpose of a Friday night ops event is to fly in a busy event in a busy airspace, and how much fun that could be. But, I mean, there's a point where it becomes oversaturated. So, again, pilots who have done these events before, flown into these airports before, kind of be judicious about selecting those airports when you can see that they're clearly overloaded. All right, very good. Henry, last remarks before we shut down?
Oh, got nothing. Thanks, Rob, for putting this together.
Well, you're welcome very much for. Thank you for being on this wonderful Valentine's Day. And Jared, we'll go ahead and send us out, sir.
I was just going to say the as much fun as it is for the pilots to jam so many airplanes in such a small airspace, it's a lot of fun for the controllers too. You know, we have to work. We depend on New York and Boston and DC for our sequence and to be able to have a smooth event, just like they depend on us to do the same. And so it's fun for the controllers, it's fun for the pilots, and you know, I'm glad we get to do this every year. So thanks for putting this on, Rob. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, well, no, absolutely, and I hope that you know, the more we do these, I hope that they get to the audience of pilots that are considering and flying these events that, you know, maybe are a little bit newer to VATSIM, maybe don't know how these procedures work. I mean, I guess the biggest key point that if you take away nothing else from this hour and a half conversation, the main key point is you can pull the route off of SimBrief, you can import it into your flight plan, or you can file it directly from SimBrief, you can pull it into your FMC, but just because you've programmed it into the FMC doesn't mean you've done your job. It's really, really important that you pull up these charts, actually read them. You know, you're accepting a clearance to do these things, so it's very important that you actually read them and know what they say to do and make sure that the aircraft does it. It's not the FMC's job to fly the plane, it's the pilot's. The FMC is just there to help you, so keep that in mind. Keep these charts in front of you. You know, have them to refer to as your flight progresses, so that you are making sure that you're making sure that the aircraft is doing what you expect it to do, and the aircraft is indeed doing what the procedure says to do. All right, guys, thanks again for your time today. Hope that we might get a chance to talk to a couple of you as we do our demo flight. Not sure if you guys are sticking around as staff or not. May or may not have staffing for this, but if we don't, it's not a big deal. We'll go ahead and talk through the normal calls that one would get in the course of this flight. So, but we will get onto the VATSIM network in just a few. We're going to boot up the working title mod of the Citation CJ4 for Flight Sim 2020. We're going to do a demonstration of this flight, and as we alluded to, we're going to start at Washington Reagan. Reagan is in North Flow as we speak, and we are going to do that departure out of Reagan with that immediate left turn to follow the river as we were just talking about, and we're going to go ahead and fly it up to John F. Kennedy Airport. So, give us just about a 5-minute intermission. It always kind of depends on getting the sim loaded up and getting the furry co-pilots out into their bathroom break, my own bathroom break, and grab a bottle of water or a can of Red Bull to fly along with. But we'll take a quick intermission. We'll be right back with you. It's the Friday Night Hotspot FNO Preview of the Northeast Corridor Friday Night Ops event coming up this Friday. Sit tight, guys. Lots of flying for you left to do on the VATUSA Twitch. guys. Welcome back. It's the Friday Night Hotspot FNO Preview Show with the Northeast Corridor Friday Night Ops event coming up on Friday the 18th. We are in the Working Title CJ4 for Flight Sim 2020, and we are going to do a demo of some of the stuff that we were just talking about with our representatives from Washington, from New York, and from Boston ARTCC. So we're going to do a demo flight from Reagan National Airport, DCA, as it is affectionately known. And we're going to head up to John F. Kennedy Airport in the Empire State. So we are on the VATSIM network. Actually, we're not yet on the VATSIM network. We're going to be on the VATSIM network. It's one thing I just now realized I did not do was open up the pilot client and connect myself to VATSIM. So let me get that taken care of here. And, oh, we got an update. We're on 3.2.0. I agree. Next. Install. Fortunately, those are real quick, those vPilot updates. But, of course, the VATSIM Velocity update just came out earlier this month. And still kind of working out a few kinks, but much more readily able to see the tiny adjustments that folks make on their arrivals and departures, and you can see much more smooth movement when it comes to aircraft that are making sudden starts and stops and directional changes, especially as they take off and land. So a wonderful update that's been highly touted on the VATSIM network, and the pilot clients, XPilot and vPilot and Swift, are all still going through a handful of different updates as the protocol kind of matures and gets fully tested and all that stuff. Does not look like there is any online air traffic control down here in the Washington area, unfortunately, but that's okay. It looks like we do have some folks on up at Kennedy. I'm not sure if they're going to be sticking around for us, but if they aren't, it is fine. We can kind of talk through the standard air traffic control calls that we would go through. Let's go ahead and start by getting into the cockpit. I'm going to show you, even though we've kind of done the pre-flight planning already, just to show you, one of my usual sources, or I'll show you two of them, for, usable routes. Of course, I have a tutorial on the Slant Alpha Adventures YouTube channel, which I kind of showed you earlier. So if you search up Slant Alpha Adventures on YouTube, you'll see a playlist called VATSIM Tutorials, and you'll see one that goes through kind of good sources for IFR routes. But I'll show you two of them. One is the actual New York ARTCC's website. This is the VATSIM New York ARTCC's website, and we can see that if we type in KDCA and KJFK, we will get a response that is based on the FAA's preferred route database. You get a series of different responses based on what type of aircraft you are. You'll see that for turbojets, this is the standard route from DC up to Kennedy. The other one that I'll show you, keep that route in mind because it's going to look real familiar to you in just a second. But the FlightAware IFR Route Analyzer, again, you kind of just put in origin, destination, fairly straightforward. And it'll tell you that every single one of the flights in its database use that exact same route. And you can see that pretty much every single one of them filed a maximum cruise altitude of 17,000. There was one here that went a little lower, but this is, we often get asked as controllers giving clearances out of DC, like, why are you capping us at 17,000? Well, it's because this is what the National Airspace System requires for this route. We can't let you have any higher because then you're into other airspace that conflicts with other routes that are going in this, what is a very busy Northeast corridor that we were just talking about. So when we as DC controllers cap that cruise altitude at 17,000, it's not because we want you to burn more fuel or we don't want you to go higher. It is that is a realistic real world restriction that even aircraft flying this route in the real world would get. So if you're replicating an airliner flight, you can see it's mostly regional jets. But if you're replicating an airliner flight and you want to see a specific flight, and you can pull this up and you can even see which gates they departed and which gates they arrived at. So if you ever want to borrow a flight number and actually use its real world gate assignments, the only difference is on VATSIM, obviously you wouldn't have those gates reserved for you. So if you get up there and realize that those gates are occupied, then you may just have to modify it. But at least it can give you an idea where this particular airline parks, and Republic is a regional that serves as an express airline for several different of the mainline carriers, but you could see which specific gates that they would use if they were doing this flight in the real world. So great resource, this FlightAware IFR Route Analyzer, not just for the routes, but for realistic call signs, aircraft types, and gate assignments that the real world flights flying this route would indeed use. So one of the ones I recommend that you go to. But anyway, we've already put the route information into my planning spreadsheet. Again, over on my VATSIM tutorials playlist, I have a tutorial on coming up with flight time and fuel estimates. I personally don't use SimBrief or any other online dispatch tool to come up with those. I use my own numbers. You're welcome to look at that tutorial and see how I do the math on that and copy my methods, or if you want to use SimBrief or something like it, that is absolutely fine as well. But I've already punched in the route and the pertinent figures as far as the mileage and the altitude. So we are ready to go. We are in the aircraft. The control profiles have already been set in their starting positions. Switches are down, magneto switches off. Fuel and payload I'm going to go ahead and set here in the sim. The fuel load that my spreadsheet has recommended is 3,427 pounds, which would be filling this to, looks like it says 59.5%, so we'll just say 60. And that should give us, in each tank, 1714, and we're 1728, so that's good. I'm going to go ahead and set the payload up to the highest it'll go without tripping the max gross. So we're going to find a max, we're going to find that we're just under the max takeoff weight of 17,110. Doesn't matter if you do that or if you want to load a little lighter, that's fine, but it is important that you remember this number in the CJ4, as we are going to have to punch it into the FMC here in just a little bit to let it know how heavy we are, so that it can calculate our takeoff reference speeds and even our landing reference speeds once we get up there. So it won't automatically sense the load. It'll automatically sense the fuel load, but it won't automatically sense how many passengers you have on board and how, like myself, how many extra pounds they picked up over the holidays. So there we go. We got those set. Go ahead and close that up. We can get the battery switch on, which is there. Get the standby display and the emergency lights armed there and there. We'll put the avionics into dispatch mode, which is going to power up one set of radios and one set of screens. So it saves a little bit of battery while we're sitting here on the ramp. You can connect the ground power, but the conventional wisdom in a business jet is running one of the engines to supply that electricity is a little cheaper usually, because they're small engines that don't burn much fuel. So it's a little cheaper than getting ground power services from the airport. So typically you don't connect the ground power unless you really, really need to, I'm told. Ori says, would you put that, Ori Darkwind, by the way, welcome to this channel. I know you well from mine. Would you put that in the remarks that you're recreating such and such flight? No, you don't have to. If you're using that call sign, great. But really, they just want to know the route, and you don't even really need to tell them the gate assignments, at least not here on the U.S. side of VATSIM. You can just tell them where you want to park, and they'll direct you that way. So battery switch, emergency lights, standby display, avionics are in dispatch mode. We can get the nav lights and the logo lights on. The logo lights are there. I've actually got a switch for the nav lights. We can get the position initialized in the FMC, which basically means we'll copy the GPS point down into the current point. We assume that the GPS is correct, and we can come over here to the audio panel. I'm going to spin the volume for COM2 down. Same thing for nav1 and nav2 and the marker beacon sounds. So we're really leaving only on transmitting on COM1, receiving on COM1, and just to double check, vPilot does indeed confirm we are transmitting and receiving only on COM1. So we are good to go with that. Over here on the pilot client, we can go ahead and file our flight plan. We are going to be IFR. We are going to go from DCA to JFK. I believe I put in Bradley as my alternate. Departure time, what is it now? We're going to call our departure time 0310. We should be able to make that time en route. Is a really short flight of 0 hours and 53 minutes. I've loaded 2 hours and 51 minutes into the tanks based on the numbers I just gave you. That's including alternates, reserves, and contingencies. Cruise speed is normally about 450 in this jet, but since we're only going to 17,000, we're going to mark it 325. And again, 17,000 is that restricted altitude on this particular route. We are slant Lima, not as slant Alpha as we would be on my channel, although we'll leave the link in the remarks there. And then again, that route that we pulled off of FlightAware and or the New York PRD page, we'll paste it right in there. The Dr. 5, the AGuard, Donald Victor 229, Pansy Victor 44, Cameron 4. So there we are, all pasted in and ready to go. All right, flight plan has been filed. We've got this over here. Now, again, we realize we don't have any air traffic control on the VATSIM network at the moment at DCA, but we can, instead of getting the ATIS information, we'll just get a METAR if it wants to respond. Oh, there it goes. 330 at 7, so we are going to be departing north, runway 1. Altimeter is 3043, and that's really all the pertinent information that we need. It is few clouds at 7,500. It's not going to bother us. 10 statute miles visibility, all that's well and good. But the 3043 we'll go ahead and set here in just a moment. We would set our comm frequency down here in the tune page and go ahead and get our clearance. But on VATSIM, without any air traffic control, we'll just set to 122.8 and 1200. So that would be a VFR code, but we're going to set just 2200. And there's some different wisdom that you'll get for what you want to set when you're IFR, but you don't have someone to assign you a squawk code. Really, as long as you're not squawking an emergency code and you're not squawking VFR, that's really all it takes. The reason I say don't squawk VFR is because if a controller comes online and they see us cruising along, they may just assume we're a VFR flight, and then they would not send us to contact me because they figure, well, he's in Class Echo airspace, he's VFR, he doesn't need to talk to me. We'll go ahead and set a code that says we're not VFR. That way, if they come online, they will know that they need to get in touch with us. This ordinarily would boot up into standby position. We can go ahead and set it to TARA now if we want. It's going to be also activating our mode Charlie, which we can see in the pilot client has indeed activated. But that used to boot up in standby. Now it seems to boot up in TARA every time. Anyway, so we would obtain our clearance from the controller. There's, like I said, there's not anybody online right now to do that with, but it would go something a little like this. Washington delivery, citation 514 Delta Victor, information Bravo, IFR to Kennedy. And they would say, citation 514 Delta Victor, clear to Kennedy Airport, Dr. 5 departure, AGuard transition that is filed. They'll either say climb via SID or maintain 5,000. They give you the, if they give you the 5,000, they'll give you the expected cruise altitude, 17,010 minutes. Departure frequency, 133.72, although in this case it's going to be 122.8. And then they give you your squawk code, whatever that was. You read that all back, and they say, read that correct. Washington Information Bravo current, thanks for reporting that. Expect runway 1, call for taxi. So we'll say, all right, we'll expect runway 1, and we'll call you in a few. 514 Delta Victor. Yeah, or he says, I thought it was 2,000 for uncontrolled IFR. There's really not, at least in the U.S., there's no such thing as uncontrolled IFR, so there's not an assigned code. 2,000 would be operating in a non-radar environment, like over the ocean, or over, pretty much over the ocean at this point. There's some overland areas that are not radar covered, but not many. But that's where the 2,000 would ordinarily come in, but again, there's just no real world equivalent really. So anything that's not an emergency code and not VFR is really fine there. Let's see. What is the next step? We got our clearance. We can go ahead and get the flight plan into the computer at this point. F plan there. Origin is KDCA. Dest is KJFK. We can put in the departure of the Dr. 5 to AGuard. We're going to depart on runway 1. We were told that. We can execute all that. We can go back to the flight plan page. We can see that the Dr. 5 to AGuard is our first step. Then after A-guard, it is direct Donal, D-O, D-O-N-I-L, 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 and Donal was his name. Victor 229 is the route that we take after that. The routes go in the left-hand side, the points go on the right-hand side, so it's Donal, Victor 229, Pansy, P-A-N-Z-E. That is not a derogatory term, that is a flower. Victor 229, Pansy, Victor 44, Cameron. That is the name of the Boston Events Coordinator. C-A-M-R-N. And then, actually probably didn't need to type that in because that's going to automatically import from arrivals. And we're just going to say the Cameron 4, from Cameron. There's no transition. It all comes from Cameron. So the Cameron 4 from Cameron. And we're just going to call it, well, do we know? We can take an educated guess. There's no ATIS information there, but if we get a METAR 320 at 16, so we're going to assume they're going to land on the 31, so we'll do the ILS to 31 left, because that's likely what we'll get coming from this side. So again, that's kind of just a guess, and we remember that Chant is the one that comes from that southwest side, although we may not need to come from Chant. We might get vectored all the way onto the final approach course, but I figure choose the transition, and then if you end up not needing it, you can just delete those points out when you get up there. All the stuff about the arrival and the runway is subject to change. This is just our best guess for now. We're going to brief this once we get up to cruise, but when we get up there, the weather might change. We'll pull the ATIS for the airport. We might see they've switched to a different flow. All kinds of things can happen, and we might find out that we've got a different approach than what we think. But we're just going to put our best guess in for now, and we'll see what happens when we get up there. All right, so let's execute all that, and let's take it over. We're going to check through we're going to step through the legs here in just a moment, but let's for right now take it through the performance initialization. Before we go to takeoff reference, we have to go to this performance initialization first. A couple things it needs to know before it can calculate our takeoff. First of all, the cruise altitude, 17,000. No, not 170,000, just 1/10 of that will be fine for today's purposes. We are at this point going to need to tell it what we're loaded to. I always just say it's 8 passengers, and then I kind of just figure out what the difference is. Looks like 2,000 pounds of cargo. It doesn't really matter how it breaks down, per se. What matters is that you get the takeoff weight pretty close to what you loaded into the sim over on this page. So we're about 50 pounds heavy. It doesn't really matter. As long as you're close, then the V speeds it comes up with. I mean, if we really want to say 1950, do that. That's almost dead on, I think, but it doesn't matter that you're that close. But just that you get close enough that you remember to enter these weights at all and get it somewhat close will get you your correct takeoff speeds. So the next thing to do is go to our takeoff performance. The mandatory entry here is the outside air temperature. Real quick, you can just get that from the static. It's -2 Celsius. So we'll go ahead and punch that in there, and the rest of that is all optional information. We'll go ahead and hit next. We can see that it's calculated our V speeds, 112, 113, 120, and 140. We'll go ahead and send those over to the primary flight display, and they have turned blue, indicating that has happened. Basically, 112 is our abort speed. If we have any engine issues or any other serious safety concerns prior to reaching 112, we will abort the takeoff, stop, come back here to the ramp where we are right now. Once we pass 112, whatever problems we have, we're taking them airborne. And once we get to 113 is when we're taking them airborne. That's when we're going to rotate, pitch the nose up for our initial climb, and get the wheels up and get going. If we have to come back, we'll do that at that point. But if we're experiencing a normal takeoff, then that is when we will rotate and go flying. If we're pitching with one engine, we'll pitch to maintain 120 knots. If we're pitching with both engines, we'll pitch to 140. I'm told that VT is actually another engine out procedure reference speed, but it also happens to be the speed you can pitch to for that first 1,000 feet of altitude with a normal climb. So that's kind of just the reference speed I use, and that's almost always going to be 140. So 112, 113, V1 and V rotate, and then 120 if you got one engine, 140 if you got two, kind of is how I think about it. Not 100% by the book, but close enough. All right, at this point, we're going to kind of get concerned about running the battery down. Let's go ahead and get the beacon light on and fire up our number 2 engine. Get that into run mode, hit the starter. We'll go ahead and monitor, make sure that the engine starts normally. We'll make sure that, so it will automatically, it's a FADEC throttle, battery start system, so it's automatically going to hit the igniter at 12, automatically going to dump the fuel in when that's appropriate, so there's really nothing else that you need to do to get the engine up and running. We'll see that it will stabilize about 53 or 54 here, about 23 or 24 there, and everything should look good. We'll start to see some of these warnings disappear as well. Good moment to take a swig of the drink since I got it. Those of you who know me from my channel, don't worry. I've got the Red Bull right here. Don't panic. Alright, so there we go. Engine 2 stabilized. Everything's good to go. Let's go ahead and get the climate control on, start cooling you guys off, and we'll get the avionics into on mode. That turns on the rest of the screens and the rest of the radios and gets us ready to go flying. At this point, we'll go ahead and set that barometric pressure that was reported in the ATIS, or in our case, the METAR. 30.43 is what was reported. So we'll go ahead and spin that up to 3043. The charted field elevation at Reagan is pretty much nothing. So we see that it's basically reading, what, 10, 12, 13 feet? I think it's 14 is actually the charted field elevation. So, yep, that's good. Pardon me, we'll do that over here on the standby altimeter as well. What was it, 3043? Yeah. So there we go, to 43. Okay, good. So that's set twice. The ground elevation confirmed. This is where we can go ahead and set that. So this is where, if you had a squawk that you were assigned, this is where you can come back down, type it in, and make sure you get over to TA and RA mode. Let's go ahead and put this into plan mode, although I do need to turn the weather radar back off. Plan mode is an overhead north-up mode. It does not follow the aircraft, although if you don't touch it right now, it will in the virtual version of the CJ4. But in the real thing, it does not follow the aircraft, and indeed, once you step it forward, it will no longer follow the aircraft in the virtual CJ4. Realistically, this is just used to kind of step through, and you can see that it has us make that immediate left turn off the runway. This is not pilot nav. You don't have to be wait to be told to make that turn. You just make it, and you follow the route, follow the magenta line. This is one of those where you are able to do that and not get yourself in trouble on VATSIM, because it's actually what you're supposed to do. But we'll just step through and we can see, oh, we got something weird there. So, yeah, we'll have to double check here. This is a good reason why you do this, huh? So we'll go through the legs page real quick and see what happened here. Where are my charts? Perfect example of why you do exactly what we're about to do here. I think if I go KDCA, if I hit paste KJFK, that's probably all in there exactly the way I had it, although I can't spell DCA. How do we spell DCA? Is it D and then... Okay, there we go. And then let's pull up the Dr. 5. The Dr. 5 continuation page is probably just the narration, and so we know what that says. And then let's pull up into Kennedy, let's pull up the Cameron 4, and let's see where we went wrong here. As I mentioned, it looked like it didn't want to pull in a transition. Oh, okay, yeah. Because we are literally picking up that transition from Cameron, but it automatically pulled in those points all the way from Sea Isle. So we can actually tell it. after after AGUARD. Yeah, let's go down into the legs page. Okay, so that's good. It's good that we did this. Legs page. Next, so after COV2 Alex Dog, this is all on the departure, and then AGUARD, and then Donald, and then after Donald, I think it's direct Pansy, right? Isn't it? So Leah, Tuber, and Atlantic City shouldn't be in there. What did I file again? Guess I should know this. No, it's Donald Victor 229 Pansy, so that's all probably correct. Let's look. Let's go to the world low. Donald, okay, so then we're on Victor 229. No, okay, so that is correct. Leah, Atlantic City. Yeah, so that's all fine. And then after Pansy, then it's Victor 44 Cameron, and I think that's where it went wrong. Victor 44 Cameron. And then it started picking up points that were way south of Cameron. It started picking us up from Sea Isle. So that's where we need to go. After Pansy, then Victor 44 to Cameron, which is Winkin Cars and Gabby and Cameron. So after Cameron, it should just be, let's say this Cameron again. So that's what we got to do, is take that reference point off and put it after Cameron there and execute. And now let's look at it. Now let's go through MFD Advanced and step through. Okay, so after Pansy, and then it's Cameron and yeah, okay. This all... And even DPK 13 looks like it might not be... That might be like off of the approach. Yeah, so that discontinuity I probably should have left in there. Yeah, so DPK 13 is a reference point off of Deer Park, but that's on the approach. And that is a discontinuity I should have left in there. So what we can do... Oh, okay, and it is. It's off. It is just basically telling us after Cameron we go direct to Deer Park until we're told otherwise. Okay, so that works fine. So then we are going to be vectored onto the arrival, the approach rather. ILS or LOC 31 left. And then the airport diagram up here. And the approach should come off of Chant. And then, yeah, so Deer Park is kind of a zigzag that we're not really going to get. But the good thing about having that in the FMC is that we're not going to automatically turn onto that approach accidentally like we know we shouldn't. So after Cameron, it's just going to take us straight on past that until we're vectored on to final there. Okay, so that really works the way it's depicted, even though it's not quite what I intended, but it's close enough for the purposes of not turning us onto the approach automatically and just keeping us straight on after Cameron. So that is good. All right, so that's good. That's the reason we check, and so we had to delete some points from Sea Isle up to Cameron that we didn't need, but that's exactly the reason that we checked that. Now that we have that done, we can get the primary flight display. So again, this isn't meant as a north-up plane following mode, but it's the way I like to have it, just for situational awareness. And then I like to use the track-up plane following mode over here. Not the way most operators set it up, but it's just what I'm comfortable with. But it is basically pilot's preference. You can kind of choose whichever version of the display you want, although I'm trying to zoom it in and it's being a little finicky. There we are. So this is a little bit more of a zoomed out tactical view. This is a little bit more of a close-in view of what's going on, and we can see that immediate left turn, and it's got that point a little far, too far out even. We want to make this immediate left turn to revage probably sooner than what's depicted here. Again, over water is okay, not over water is not okay. All right. The initial altitude, remember, we're cleared to 5,000 feet only. Whether we got it climb via SID or whether we got maintain 5,000 doesn't matter. Same instruction either way. Climb via SID just basically means climb to the initial altitude, but make sure you hit all these intermediate altitude restrictions also. So that's why it says climb via the SID. So at least 1,500 by the time we're at Revage, and then 4,000 by Dogue, and then 5,000 by Doctor, but we don't go any higher than 5,000 until we're told. So we set that max altitude in the mode control panel to 5,000 feet and no higher until the controller tells it's okay to do that. For the initial heading, we can set 007 because that is the initial heading. But remember, we're going to be making an immediate left turn, and we're going to be following that charted route immediately after we get airborne. So, matter of fact, just for safety purposes, we're only on that 007 until we make that immediate left to 331 and then 310. So we might set, kind of a 320 just to make sure we stay. Worst case scenario, the avionics don't do what we want them to do. We'll set this down to 320 and make sure that we're more or less tracking up the river, just to keep ourselves out of trouble. Alright, time to get the safety lights and seatbelts on. We'll go ahead and get the climate control off for just a second. Whoops. And we'll get the left side engine up and running. Again, the igniter's automatically going to hit itself at 12. Again, we'll do a little hydration while we're waiting on that to happen. We should see these last few warning lights drop off as the engine temps and pressures all start to come up, and then the starter indicator will be the last thing that drops off there. We should see a status screen appear here. Notice that our fuel got about 21 pounds out of balance because we were sitting on the ramp here running just the number 2. We'll fix that later. Either that or we'll make it worse, one or the other. So there's about 54, there's about 25, so we are good to go there. Since the warnings have all gone out, we can get the climate control back on. Get the avionics. Sorry, no, wait a minute. Yeah, flight control check at this point. We'll make sure that, flight control check means I should have my rudder pedals where I can reach them. That'd be a good thing to do. Flight controls. Check. There we go. Now we can, move the feet back and forth, hit the brakes, okay. Yoke, of course, you can't see the yoke, but do want to, obviously we're checking really the outside control surfaces, but we really also want to make sure that our sim control controls move with our virtual controls. I mean, you know what I mean. So there we go. Somebody outside will confirm that we got all that done and everything is working the way it should. So there we go. Flaps can be set to 15, which is that lever there. We can confirm on this display that the flaps are indeed 15. Trim is set to the bottom of the green range, which is good. We can go ahead and get our passenger briefing started. It is a long one, so I like to get it started now, especially because we're departing runway 1. It's not that long a taxi. So we get that started now. Pitot and static are on which switch? That one? Yep, there we go. And taxi light can come on as well. Did I even pull up the Reagan Airport diagram? I did not. So we'll say Washington ground, citation 514 Delta Victor. We're down at the GA terminal. We got the information Charlie now and ready to taxi to runway 1. And they'll say, all right, runway 1, taxi via Kilo, Charlie, Alpha, Juliet. All right. So that's what we'll do. Parking brake is off.
fasten your lap belt, place the flat metal end into the buckle. Pull on the lap belt strap to tighten the lap belt. To fasten the shoulder harness,
Go ahead and get turned
pull
around.
the shoulder harness strap across and in front of you, and hook the metal end onto the stud.
So we're taxiing out past the southwest, what they call the banjo terminal, that round one down there at the bottom.
To release the shoulder harness, unhook the metal end from the stud.
Right before we get too far off the ramp, we check our brakes. Brakes are working fine.
Please keep your lap belt securely fastened about you at all times while in your seat. In the event of cabin depressurization, oxygen masks will automatically drop from overhead compartment.
And we want to get taxiing out past the east side of the banjo terminal, so I guess we'll follow this.
Adjust masks by pulling the elastic
And then we'll
straps.
pick up Kilo.
Don your mask prior to assisting others with their masks.
And then we'll make the right turn on Charlie.
An emergency exit is located.
While we're taxiing out, we can go ahead and get our weather radar and terrain radar on.
The plastic panel covering the release handle. Turn the handle in the clockwise direction. Pull the top
Watching the
of emergency
breakdancing
exit,
playing over there.
lifting the base out of the opening and into the cabin. Discard the emergency exit overboard. Exit the cabin by stepping through the opening onto the wing and continue forward off the wing.
Double check here. Still got no local,
Used to enter the aircraft,
but just in case there's other planes here, we'll say Washington traffic, citation 514 Delta Victor's taxiing out to runway 1 for IFR northbound departure Washington.
down on the inner handle
So here's
degrees. Push the door open.
here's is it Bravo? That's the first right,
Life vest locations are placed
and then
near your seat. To don the life vest, tear open the storage bag and remove the vest. Place the life vest over your head. Wrap
and that says it's Alpha and Zulu.
and tighten the strap.
Oh, okay, that is correct. Hold on, where am I? Am I turning too soon then?
Then tighten the strap.
That might be Bravo that I'm turning on.
Inflate the life vest after exiting the plane by pulling downward on both red tabs. If the life vest fails to inflate, blow into the manual.
You gotta watch, because a lot of these airports at Microsoft Flight Sim 2020, the taxiway signs are not exactly correct.
Fire extinguishers, as well as other emergency or survival equipment. Refer to your passenger briefing card or consult your flight crew.
So what is that?
Have a pleasant flight.
Can't see with that. That is Charlie. Okay, so yeah, we want to make the right at Charlie and then cross. So, as a matter of fact, when I gave my taxi instructions to myself, I don't think I said cross runway 4. So we will hold short runway 4 because we weren't told to cross anything. So we'll say ground citation 514 Delta Victor, short of 4 on Charlie. And they'll say, oh yeah, citation 514 Delta Victor, runway 1, continue taxi via Charlie Alpha Juliet, cross runway 4. Alright, cross runway 4, 514 Delta Victor. So there we go, we'll cross runway 4. Southbound on Charlie, we'll make the left onto Alpha. There is, yeah, I've been told there is an add-on that corrects some of these taxiway signs. And by the way, left onto Alpha is this one here. I haven't checked it out, but I'm told that there is one. But it looks like these are actually correct, which is good to know. And so there's Alpha, and then we'll make the right onto Juliet. And then Juliet all the way down to the end. This is where you would probably be handed over to the tower controller as you were crossing runway 4. But since we're on the intercom now, we'll just say Washington traffic, citation 514 Delta Victor, departing runway 1, IFR northbound, Washington. This is the hold bay that they were talking about. So if you got told to taxi the aircraft, call on here in carrier, but no voice, by the way. So if you got told to taxi into the hold bay, that's where it is. Still no voice. All right, anyway. Landing lights on, taxi light off, strobe lights on, pito's already on. We'll go ahead and engage toga, which does not... It only engages the point sequencing. It doesn't do anything with the throttles. These are not auto throttles. So the FMC and the autopilot is in toga mode, but the throttles don't move. Whoever's trying to call. I mean, hopefully they're not up on short final. I didn't see anybody. See anybody on VATSPY? There's a GA aircraft. Oh, wait a minute. Looking at the wrong airport. Yeah, there's somebody else on the ground here, but I don't see anybody on approach, so I think we're okay. Alright, so runway 1 line up and wait, or runway 1 clear for takeoff. Again, they're not going to give you that immediate left. If you filed that Dr. 5, they're expecting you to fly that Dr. 5. So there we are, ready to go. Temps and pressures all looking good. We'll go ahead and advance our throttles to takeoff. Alright, there's our V1, there's our rotate. Fortunately, we're off the ground nice and early. Get the gear up. Pitch to the 140, although we're already well through that anyway, so we're at 160. It's no problem. Through 1,000, we'll go ahead and get the flaps up. But yeah, you want to make that immediate left and make sure you don't go any further north than the river. And you want to make sure you don't go any higher than 5,000 feet.
Altitude.
All right, well, we'll say we get cleared to 14,000 now, so up we go. Autopilot. Nav. Light level change. Whoops, whoops, whoops. Put it in heading mode. Get ourselves back over there. Make sure we're in climb. Yeah, see, the plane kind of didn't want to follow. Exactly. The P-56 is all down here, so I think we've missed that, but the plane didn't want to follow the route, so you gotta manually intervene. If you see it's not doing what you want it to do, get it into a mode where it's doing what you need it to do. So we said 14,000. So we're in altitude mode. We're going to get it back into nav mode in a moment. Flight level change at 240. So there we go. Now we can get it into nav mode, get it up to that point Alex. I think part of the problem is these points come so quickly that the plane has trouble sequencing them. So you really got to watch and make sure that it does indeed intercept them. They're spaced very closely together, so you might end up having to do more hand flying on that than you ordinarily would. We're through 10, go ahead and get the logo and nav lights off. Skip ahead here a couple. I think at this point it's okay to zoom that out a little bit. Let's make sure we got through everything okay. Yeah, gears
Altitude.
up. Alright, and then we'll say we got cleared up to our cruise now, 17,000. So throttle's set, gears retracted, flaps retracted. We got from climb to cruise, from cruise to climb mode. Landing and logo. We can go ahead and rebalance the fuel here. We got
traffic, Cathay,
a little bit more on the left than the right, so we'll fix that.
taxiing to runway 30 Zulu Yankee 11.
Whoops, I don't know what that is.
Altitude.
Now we're getting up to 17,000, which is as high as we're going to go in this aircraft. On this flight, at least. So you'll notice when I rebalance the fuel, it doesn't actually move fuel from left to right. It just takes more fuel from the left side than the right side, so the left fuel tank is going to dissipate more quickly than the right fuel tank. So as soon as they get down to about equal, we'll set that back and be done with that. Notice in the meantime, we've leveled off at 17,000. I can actually go ahead and turn the seatbelt lights off. But we still got climb power in. We're going to go ahead and run the speed right up to about 300 knots, and then I'll pull that down and we'll find, there's no auto throttle. It's not going to intercept 300 on its own. We're just going to have to pull this down manually and find a cruise setting that keeps about that 300 knots or thereabouts. So I've got it dialed all the way back to about 84, and it still looks like, well, let's put it to 83. That looks like it's going to be pretty close. We'll check on it again in a moment, but it looks like it's okay. And I overshot the fuel. Let's go ahead and reverse that process. Doing too many things at once. So now the right's a little heavier, but reverse that process and we'll draw a little bit more from the right for a few moments. So that's settling in. It's going to keep 301, 302. It's fine if it does. If it's going to drift up a little bit, then we'll pull a little bit more throttle out. A little bit more yet. 81 even. Alright, fuel balance almost dialed in. Oh, nope, the right's less. It does not need to be as exact as I'm making it. This is just kind of my own obsession. It's not even going to warn you until you're 100 pounds difference, but it's just, you know, kind of like one of my things. I like to get it as close as possible, so there we go. I think we got it now. So speed's dropped a little bit, but I think we're probably fine there. I'm just going to bump it up one more N1 there, 81 to about 82. Yeah, too bad there's not some sort of Twitch emote for nagging me about my fuel balance. Well, we'll see, Papa Charlie, we'll see. Those of you who don't know me, by the way, if you don't know my channel, you might want to check us out over at twitch.tv/Slant Alpha Adventures. Now, Slant Alpha means non-RNAV flying, so you're not going to see a whole lot of flying of this aircraft, the CJ4, but it is a fun little plane, and I do enjoy occasionally changing up the theme of the stream in order to fly it for you. But the whole point of Slant Alpha means non-RNAV, means flying without the benefit of a GPS or a flight management computer or anything that's, you know, got an ability to tell you instantly anywhere you are in the world. Well, the way we navigate on my channel is typically through those old school VOR radials, non-directional beacons, all those radio signals that you tune in manually off of the chart. You spin a little analog gauge to see what direction you are from it, or you spin it until it sets up on a specific radial, like if you're trying to follow a specific airway, and then the needle tells you whether you need to correct to the right or left. That's the sort of thing we do over on that channel. We normally do that on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 7 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. Obviously, tonight we're a little bit off that schedule because we're over here doing this for you instead. But search up Slant Alpha Adventures. We also got a YouTube, and we've got some VATSIM tutorials. So if you are new to VATSIM, and you heard us talking tonight about how to fly some of these procedures without making some of the common missteps that newer VATSIM pilots make, we've got a whole bunch of tutorials on the Slant Alpha Adventures YouTube channel as well that are geared for new pilots getting onto the network that are just learning how to put a route together, or what to say to air traffic control, or all those sorts of things. So hopefully you'll check that out and find them useful. Tonight, though, it's called the Friday Night Hotspot FNO Preview. We are doing a preview of this Friday night's Northeast Corridor Friday Night Ops event. Again, VATUSA.net. And let's see, I know I've got something open over here. We got all of our charts open, so we'll just go ahead and pull this one up here. VATUSA.net. And you go under Pilot Tool. Of course, the banner's right there. But Pilot Tools, Event Calendar. And you can see it's the 18th. And it is the 8th annual edition of this specific event, the Northeast Corridor, featuring DCA, JFK, and Boston as our featured fields. Now, it's only since after the COVID era that a Friday night ops event has been mandated to feature more than one field. You know, ever since we've started to realize that with the advent of the COVID shutdowns followed by the advent of Flight Sim 2020, we have so many new VATSIM pilots that one featured event field was easily getting overloaded every single week. So Friday night ops events now almost always feature multiple airfields. Well, this Northeast Corridor is one that has been a regional FNO event for, as the banner says, this is coming up on the 8th year of this particular event. So this is one that was always kind of a cooperative venture between the Washington, New York, and Boston ARTCCs. But that kind of format has become the norm for FNOs, with a regional facility being featured, and that's where we decided to start instituting these FNO previews, where we gather up representatives from all those the ARTCCs that put on those events. In this particular instance, it's the Washington, New York, and Boston controllers that we got representatives together from, and had a great panel discussion. If you guys happen to miss it, you can wind back the video on demand here on the VATUSA Twitch channel. Will be available for, I'm not sure whether it's a week, 2 weeks, what it's set to on this channel, but certainly you can wind that back and check it out. But if you don't happen to catch it there, it'll be on VATUSA's YouTube channel, probably first thing tomorrow morning and thereafter. So great resource you can use to check out that panel discussion. And we went over a bunch of the arrival procedures, instrument approaches, the ground operations, and then the departure procedures out of the featured fields for this Friday's event. So some great tips and tricks for making sure that you comply with those procedures and do everything that you can as a pilot to help the event go smoothly. So hope that you'll check that out if you didn't happen to see it earlier tonight. About time for us to start looking over that arrival procedure, and we did kind of give it a preview. We looked at it in brief, and again, we know that it's not a descend via, so we're not going to get a specific crossing descend via profile where the plane is going to automatically hit all these various restrictions. These all say expect. So you assume that the controller will say cross Cameron at and maintain 1000, but it might be something different. If traffic is stacked up and they need to put you higher there because they're about to put you in this hold, they might put you higher. Published holds, that's kind of a good thing we didn't cover tonight, but if they say hold as published at Cameron, well, there you go. left turns, a 041 and a 221. But for whatever reason, you might get higher than 11, you might get lower than 11, but you have to wait until the controller issues you that restriction. These are expects, so you won't get that in terms of a descend via. But what that does mean is when you get that crossing restriction, you are going to have to manually type it into the FMC. And we'll see that the top of descent is currently kind of up here to the northeast. Let's see what happens when we get this descend via. Go to the legs page. I'm sorry, when we not the descent via. When we get this crossing restriction to cross Cameron at 11,000, again, it's not going to import automatically because it's not a firm part of that procedure. It's just planning purposes. But let's say that's what we get. We type that slash. We type 11,000. We put it into that point Cameron. And we can see where it does look like it moved that top of descent a little sooner. If we then say, well, the first thing they're going to give us is hogs at flight level 180. Well, let's see what happens when we do that. Well, are we even passing that point hogs? No, we're not. We're coming in. We're coming in from the west, so we're not even passing that point hogs. So there we go. So Cameron at 11,000. We've now got that in. We would have to assume the controller says citation 514 Delta Victor. Cross Cameron at and maintain 11,000. The other thing we'll do is this star tells us to slow to 250 at that point. Even though we're above 10 still, they want us at 250 for traffic management purposes. Now, again, this thing does not have auto throttles, so there's not a real purpose in putting this in. It's not going to automatically manage our speed, but what it will do is it will warn us. If we're coming up on Cameron and we're more than about 15 knots too fast, it will warn us. It'll put a yellow message up on the upper left-hand corner of the nav display here that will remind us of our speed, and that will be kind of a clue that we need to hit the brakes. So I like having those restrictions in, even though the plane doesn't have auto throttle and it will not manage that speed automatically for us. It will help us to do our job and manage that speed manually. I think it is time to hit the one undocumented checklist item that we always do manage to work in on our channel. Ori Darkwind has to check out. Always a pleasure to have you on board, Ori, whether I'm here or whether I'm home on the Slant Alpha channel. The one thing that's in my checklist is as we cross 18,000 feet, we set the standard altimeter, but we are not going to do that today. We're not at 18,000 feet. We're not even going to be at transition level. We're going to be at 17,000. It's not even flight level 170. In the U.S., transition level was at 18,000. By the way, you ever wondered, hey, you notice how you change your altimeter from the local setting to the standard setting as you pass 18,000? And, oh, coincidentally, that's also where you stop saying an altitude and start saying flight level. Well, that's not a coincidence. Those two things do, in fact, go hand in hand. That's what a flight level is. A flight level is what's on your altitude when you're calibrated to standard pressure as opposed to the local actual reported pressure. So those two things go hand in hand by design. But let's go ahead, and like I said, we already kind of presume that we're going to get that descend and cross and maintain 11,000 at Cameron. We don't have a center controller on that's going to tell us that, so we just have to kind of assume that that's what we would get. We do have Kennedy approach. It's actually New York approach. The whole area is called New York approach, but the New York approach controller that's handling Kennedy. They do have an ATIS information up running at the airport now, so we'll go ahead and check that. That'll give us some clues as to what we should expect coming in there. And what was it, Cameron? I can't remember who it was, or maybe it was it was Jeremy possibly, who was saying instead of tuning it in on the radio, the real quick way to get it is to just go ahead and double click it when you see it up there. Just double click that, it'll pop right in. Information Delta 34010, it's 3041. We can go ahead and make that adjustment now. It's only 2 off from what we have it set at. Change the standby as well. ILS to 31 right, visual to 31 left. So we are going to assume that we'll get 31 left because we're coming from the south. So it makes more sense, instead of crossing us over the finals for 31 left, it makes sense that we'll probably get vectored onto the final for 31 left. But it does say we are expecting a visual there, and 10 statute miles with no cloud cover, so that does make total sense. However, we're going to go ahead and set up the ILS just to have the guidance, just to have the points in the FMC, just to have the magenta line that'll guide us in the right direction, just to have the glide slope and localizer indicators that will help us kind of, manage that approach and descent appropriately at the right angle and on the extended center line. So we'll go ahead and program it like we're doing the ILS, but we just might get a more aggressive intercept onto that final approach course than we would if we were doing it in instrument conditions. So that's really the only true difference. I mean, you're still following the same final path, but you're just going to get onto that path in possibly a much more aggressive manner than that gentle 30-degree intercept 10 miles out or whatnot. So I don't know at what point we technically start talking to the approach control. Oh, looks like they just popped off too. Whoops. Okay, well, we'll see what happens. It looks like they still have a tower controller on. And he's only covering Newark and satellites. So we'll double check that he's not, I mean, it's possible that he's inheriting that other sector, that Kennedy sector, but typically when they control when they're logged on as Newark, that they're typically only controlling that side of the airspace. So we'll check with them just to make sure. But it looks like the Kennedy approach controller, the New York approach controller controlling the Kennedy portion of the airspace is just now hopped off. So 2855 if we want to just check in. $28.55. New York approach, citation 514 Delta Victor.
4 Delta Victor, New York approach.
Yes, sir. Just confirm. We saw that there was a Kennedy sector controller that just stopped off. Just confirming. Are you inheriting that airspace too, or are you just keeping the Newark side?
Unfortunately, I'm only covering Newark today.
Okay, just checking. Thanks. 514 Delta Victor. We'll see it.
Yes, no problem. Thanks for asking.
Depends on who's on. You know, some of them are certified for multiple pieces of the airspace, and some of them aren't. So it never hurts to ask. Let's step this. Step this forward a little bit. Yeah, so what that means is that with nobody on to tell us otherwise, we'll kind of vector ourselves onto that final. Again, a visual, so we can kind of vector ourselves pretty aggressively onto it, which we'll do. But there is still a tower controller. So what we'll do here is 19.1. Well, actually, I'll tell you what. Let's clear that out. We'll swap back into 22.8s, but it's 19.1 that we'll get set up in the standby and ready to switch over to when we are established on final. All right, let's start looking at that approach again. We're going to brief it like it's the ILS, but we're going to just assume that we're going to get vectored onto it more aggressively like it's a visual. So there's pieces of it that won't apply to us, like the missed approach, minimums, all that sort of stuff. But like I said, we'll just run through a full briefing as though we're doing it as an ILS, just in case something happens to the weather and we suddenly need to change, or we can't get the airport in sight or whatever. We'll set the leg. We already kind of looked at the legs. We just need to make sure that Zax and Meals, Zax at 2,000, Meals at 1,800 are in there, so we'll check that. Zax 2,000, Meals at 1,800, and then the runway. And then we did say, oh, the missed approach takes us back to Chant at 3,000. So Chant at 3,000 is the missed. Okay, that's correct. Again, that's the missed if it's the ILS. Wouldn't be the missed of a visual, but we'll just make sure that it's in there anyway. We do want to check and make sure 111.35 and 314 should auto-tune, but we've seen cases where the wrong frequency comes in. So always good to double check that. 111.35 and 314. We'll show you where that's going to pop in. It'll be actually, I'll show you right now. It's going to pop in right where it says preset VOR1. When we get close, it's going to change that preset to 11.35, and that'll be how we know the correct ILS frequency is tuned in. We are going to start down. We're going to presume that we've been cleared to cross Cameron at 11,000, so we'll set 11,000 in the MCP. We'll go ahead and put it into VNAV mode, so the plane will decide when to start that descent, although looks like it's going to be starting real soon. It's already decided that 11,000 is the next constraint. It's already decided how much it's going to have to pitch down and what vertical speed it's going to have to attain to get there. And you'll see that the vertical path is armed, but not yet captured, as we're still at our vertical, our VNAV altitude hold for now. Back to the approach briefing. We talked about the legs. We can go ahead and set up the performance, although we're going to have to watch for this descent to start here in a minute. We'll set up the performance, approach, the predicted temperature is -7. Nice cold day in New York. -7. Pop that in there. Go to the next. 111 and 119 are the V speeds. We'll go ahead and send those. And okay, we can see that the snowflake's coming down. We'll get the belts on. We'll get ready to throttle the engines back to about 50%. Again, there's no auto throttle, so as the plane pitches forward to attain that path, you're going to have to pull the throttles down, or else you're going to rocket upward in speed. So manually pitch to about 50%, and then we'll just kind of capture 280 for now. And then when we get up to that point, Cameron, we'll need to slow it to 250. Alright, so we're good. We started the descent. Seatbelt lights are on. Let's resume that approach briefing now. Frequency and course were noted. Minimums, if we're performing it as an ILS, the minimums for a straight into 3-1 left are 213. So and this aircraft sets it by the 10s, so we can't set 210. We can't 10. We can't round down, but we can round up. So we'll set 220 there. Slowing to 290. Okay, we're good for now. We're gonna need to. All right, yeah. Let's make a modification here. We're actually coming up on that point, Cameron, so we're gonna need to slow down. But let's go ahead and make a modification that we're going to go Cameron and then essentially just join that left base. Again, we don't have an approach controller to tell us otherwise. And so let's just say after Cameron, we've been told to send and maintain 2,000 because that's going to be the altitude at Zax. Does seem to think it can attain that arc there tells you when it thinks it'll attain that set altitude. So it does think it can attain that altitude before Zax. So that's good. We're going to go ahead and let the speed come down to about 240, because that's where this aircraft likes to be. Otherwise, obviously, if we were still on the Cameron, we would have to maintain the speed restrictions. But we're going to presume now that we're going to get, you know, an intercept, a radical, nice, aggressive intercept onto the final. So we're just going to be given a descent all the way down to 2,000, and we'll maintain 240, and then when we get closer to that turn, slow it to 210, and then once we get ready to turn on final, we'll get down to 170. So speed management's about to come real fast in this aircraft. Anyway, finishing that approach briefing. Minimums, we said 230, I believe. Is that what I said? It's 213, so we can set 220. So we get that done. Refs menu. And again, so it depends. Some aircraft you can set this right to the right number. Sometimes you just have to go to the nearest 10. But again, you can't round down. You got to round up. 220. Whoops. Didn't select it. And then a review of the V speeds again. 18 and 11. Still thinks it's going to get us to 2 by there, so we're good. Hasn't got us into approach mode yet. But we'll look for that ILS to 3-1 left. In the meantime, let's, again, FMC legs were checked. Missed approach legs were checked. V speeds were set and noted. Frequency and course were noted. Minimums were set. Forecast winds were checked. I think it's 340 at 10. So it's going to be a very, very slight right to left. We know that the cloud cover is reported clear, so shouldn't have any issues with visibility. Missed approach altitude we said was 3,000, but again, we're not really flying the charted miss since we're flying this as a visual approach. But if we, in case we got switched over to the ILS, we'd need to remember left turn to chant 3,000. And also, if we do happen to make it down, where are we parking? We're going to land 3-1 left. Where's general aviation? Oh, it's way up here at the end. So we're going to roll long and turn right. That's going to be the plan for GA. So 3-1 left is making good sense for us here, which is good. All right, we're under 10. We're going to do the landing briefing here.
May I have your attention, please?
Got the logo lights and landing lights on.
Please turn off all portable electronic devices, snow tables, secure luggage, and loose articles. Return your seat to the upright and outboard position. Extend your headrest and fasten your lap belt and shoulder harness. After landing, please remain in your seat with your lap belt and shoulder harness securely fastened until the aircraft is under.
All right, I think we're good.
Thank you.
Guys, on my channel, over on the Slant Alpha Adventures channel, we have a ongoing monthly raffle by which you enter by being the closest predictor to our vertical descent rate at the moment the wheels touch. Obviously, that's not the only criteria for a good landing. So we're going to try and get it on center line, on touchdown zone, at the right configuration and the right airspeed. But then we're going to try and put it on nice and smooth for you. So we'll do our best. Obviously, again, not the primary goal, but just your prediction of the vertical descent rate at the moment the wheels touch can come into the chat anytime you're ready now. Just a number into the chat is fine, positive or negative. We'll know that you mean a descent rate either way. You don't need to enter any kind of a bot command. And the closest predictor gets an automatic entry into the Slant Alpha Adventures landing rate raffle, which will be drawn on Wednesday the 23rd. So a week from this coming Wednesday. Is it a week? What's this, 14, 16? Yeah, a week from this coming Wednesday is when we'll do the next drawing over on the Slant Alpha Adventures channel. But if you're the winner, don't worry if you're not going to be over there that night. We hope that you will be. But if you're not, it's cool. We will contact you by virtue of the Twitch Whispers, or if we happen to be able to find you on a Discord, that is fine too. But we'll contact you one way or the other and let you know if you win the raffle next Wednesday. Just like was done there, Big Papa Paulie. Putting just a number into the chat just like that, no bot command. Mine is not even optional because we know Again, I have yet to figure out how to climb onto the runways at Kennedy. So, and inverted does not count because that's still a descent, whether you're facing up or facing down. But, yeah, go ahead and put those predictions in, just like Big Papa Paulie did. Any number, positive or negative, into the chat, and we will see who is closest after we touch down here at Kennedy. I'm going to go ahead and tune the tower frequency. A little early to check in with them yet until we're established on final. But we'll go ahead and switch over to the tower frequency as we are turning on the final there. And 111.35 has now populated in, and again, that is the correct frequency as noted at the top of the chart. So we are good here. All right, we're going to go ahead and slow it to 210 now. We can see the glide slope indicator and the localizer indicator have just popped in. And we are below, so that's good. We'll get a chance to level off, get speed under control, and then join that localizer. I'm going to zoom the display in 1 notch here. I'm going to go ahead and engage approach mode. However, we are pretty much going to fly that portion of it manually. Speed to 210.
Speedbird 554.
As we get ready to make the intercept, we'll get it down to 170. Get the gear and flaps deployed. Make some last-minute landing checks. Check in with the controller.
I'm sorry, say that again?
And hopefully put this nice and smoothly onto the ground for you.
Speedbird 554. All right, Speedbird 554, right Quebec. Taxi to the ramp via Quebec Alpha. Have a great night.
Taxi to the ramp via Quebec Alpha. You too. Have a long Thursday.
You too, thanks for flying.
Yeah, guys, looks like we got the field in sight as well. Tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and check in. We're a little far out. We're if we join at Zach's, an 11-mile base turn. So we're going to call this about an 12-mile base. Left base to 31 left. Just give them an advance heads up that we're coming. A little bit further out than you'd normally be handed over the tower, but we can go ahead and do that. Oh, we can keep the speed up to 210. I don't know. We're getting ready to intercept. We can keep it rolling down to 170. Kennedy Tower, citation 514 Delta Victor's on about a 12-mile left base, runway 31 left visual. No?
November 514 Delta Victor, Kennedy Tower, good evening. Continue approach.
All right, we'll continue in 514 Delta Victor. So he's basically just told us we're either he's got somebody to line up ahead of us, or we're just too far out. He can't clear us to land yet. So he's just cleared somebody to land on the right side, so we'll have to watch.
Citation 4 Delta Victor, wind 340 at 10, runway 31 left, clear to land.
Clear to land 31 left, 514 Delta Victor. All right, so we need to really make sure we don't overshoot the final, turn to final, because there's somebody on the opposing side. So I am taking over control of this aircraft, my aircraft, having help us.
Altitude 928, runway 31
We're going to
left.
set the mist
Taxi
to
via Alpha,
3,000,
Juliet,
even though again,
cross runway 4 left.
Again, we are not flying the ILS, therefore we're not flying the mist. We can go ahead and get flaps out. Pretty much descending on a glide slope. We'll go ahead and get gear out as well. Cutting the turn a little bit here. But again, I want to cut the turn a little bit. I don't want to stray past that final.
Holding point Alpha Juliet. Clear near 90 feet.
And then we'll keep Keep about 170 here. 500 call is going to be the last call for the landing rate predictions, by the way. Meals is the 5-mile fix. So that's where we'll keep 172.
American 20 for the T, copy.
Attention aircraft, a lot of controllers just got disconnected and reconnected, so if you called in the last 30 seconds, I missed your call. American 2846, Kennedy Tower, go ahead.
Making sure we're here, American 20.
American 2846, a firm.
A little low and slow at this point.
Yes, I do.
Taxi line 31 left, taxi via Alpha Juliet. Cross line 4 left, Korean Airlines.
Let's try and keep 170 in. Localizer's looking good. Do have the runway in sight. Glide slope, we're still
United 2232
low.
requesting pushback. I think I did it right this time.
United 2232, I still don't have a route filed. I see that you filed a plan for Seattle, but there's no route.
Okay, I'll see. United 2232.
December.
David 564, I'm just backing down to Seminole rather than Akron. Can I check my reverse? Yeah, I'll go back down Alpha. Speedbird 554 Heavy, you said you want to go back down Alpha? Yeah, back down Alpha to the other side of the center.
Alright, glide slope's coming down finally.
Depending on which way you want to go, if you want to go...
Do that in our
right,
landing clearance, by the way.
If you're going to go to the left, go on Bravo. Sorry,
So there's our 5-mile final. We'll go ahead and get slowed now to the final approach speed against 118 and 111.
JetBlue 917, Kennedy Tower.
Drop the throttles
behind an
and
Airbus
pitch.
320 on short final, wind 340 at 10 runway 31 right, clear to land.
Second left of flaps coming in. We'll add the power back in to counteract that additional drag. Speed starting to bleed off.
United 2232 requesting pushback. I think I put it in correctly. Again.
United 2232, clearance on request, standby.
Alright, now we're below glide slope. We'll get that fixed while the remainder of the speed bleeds off.
United 2232, I have your clearance advised, ready to copy.
Get it down to about 118. A little slow. Still a little low, actually, too.
United 2232, I have your clearance advised, ready to copy.
United 2232 requesting pushback.
United 2232, I cannot give you a pushback until I give you a clearance. I need to give you a clearance. Are you ready to copy your clearance?
Oh, yep, I'm ready.
United 2232, clear to Seattle Airport via score 4 departure, Yankee transition. Radar vectors coat, then as filed.
Alright, 120, okay.
Expect flight level 360.
Last call, guys, for those landing rate predictions as we come through the 500 call coming up here momentarily. We'll go ahead and slow it from our V approach to our VREF. 111 is what we're aiming for. There's 111, we'll keep it.
500.
There's our 500 call, we are stable. We're still stable.
2846, which terminal you want to go to?
American Terminal.
American 2846. Left Alpha, taxi to the ramp via Alpha. Have a good night.
Left Alpha via ramp Alpha, American 26, good night.
United 2232, I need a read back on that clearance.
Speed's a little high.
United 2232, expect PDC.
Minimums.
We are continuing the approach. By the way, flaps are down and checked, gears down and green. We are clear to land. Probably want to check that before that, but well, we did it. Now we're out over the threshold, and we'll put in just a barely touch of a minimal flare here.
Altitude.
Okay, Tower Alpha 360, good evening.
Spoilers. Whoops, that's not spoilers. Spoilers out there. We'll try and maintain center line. We'll put the nose down nice and gently.
Clearance on request, expect PDC.
Expect PDC, Alpha 360.
And we'll get the right hand turned off here at the next one. A little slightly on the firm side, but got it down okay. I think the parameters were all pretty good. We were pretty well in the touchdown zone. Center line got a little wonky there at the end, but pretty good on speeds, pretty good on touchdown zone. Configuration was checked late, but was correct. Flaps and spoilers can now go stowed. The pitot heat can come off, strobes off, landing lights off. That should be good. Where did we get off here? Looks like we're off at Papa and Bravo. Talk about the winning number here in just a moment. Mike Bravo. Tower 5 and 4 Delta Victor's off 3-1 right at Mike Bravo going to GA.
4 Delta Victor, left Alpha. Taxi via Alpha Quebec to the ramp. Have a great night.
All right, left Alpha, then Alpha Quebec, 5 and 4 Delta Victor. Thanks to you. So Alpha's the second one in. All right, so Mike Bravo, and then left on Alpha. Although that sign says it's Quebec. Oh yeah, Alpha Quebec is what he said. So again, apparently that's the point at which Alpha becomes Quebec.
Runway 31 left, clear for takeoff.
So we'll go over the winning numbers here in just a moment. Again, it registered a little bit firmer than I'd like to see it, but overall happy with it. Certainly not egregiously firm. So we'll talk about what those winning numbers were. I got all the stuff done off of the runway. We got flaps and spoilers stowed. We got the pitot heat off. Landing light off. Strobe light off. We can get the weather radar off and the terrain radar off as well. And then GA is up ahead on Quebec, all the way out to Quebec 4. I know it was firmer than I predicted, says Iowa Scotsman. Yeah, we'll go over those numbers in just a second. But yeah, pretty good demonstration there. Again, the key factor I think being that if Kennedy's landing on the 3-1s, you know, you come off of that Cameron, you can pretty much expect a straight descent into the approach, depending on how bad traffic is. If the traffic is light, if you get into the event fairly early, then you can expect kind of a pretty good continuous descent right down onto the approach, just like we did. If traffic's a little heavier, they might spin you around out to the east a little bit for a longer final, or they may vector you around for a step down descent. So depending on what the traffic situation looks like is how that's going to go. But as you saw, pretty much decent continuous descent right onto the approach if the traffic permits. But the key demo point, I think, for tonight was that departure out of Reagan. Immediate left turn. You do not wait to be told to turn left. You are not waiting to be given a vector. It is not that kind of a departure. Again, there's three kinds of departures, guys. Radar vectored, pilot nav, and hybrid. And in the case of pilot nav, you are not waiting for the controller to give you a turn. You do not maintain runway heading if that's not what the procedure says to do. So again, if you take away nothing else, if you're fairly new to VATSIM, you're going to be flying in a big, busy event like this for the first time, the big takeaway is you can't just program the FMC. You can't just import the route from SimBrief and plop it in there and expect that your job is done. The plane does not fly for you. Your job is to look at that chart, see what it says to do, and then make sure you're in the correct mode for the plane to do what needs to be done to follow that procedure. Is that MCR and Tashi here? Wow, man. Good to see you. I know I'm not terribly interactive with the chat on this channel. When I stream on my own channel, I try to be a little bit more interactive.
Korean Air 928, no further ATC available.
This is not my native streaming channel. Again, those of you who don't know me, I'm host of a Twitch live stream called Slant Alpha Adventures. Oh, I'm at Quebec 3. I missed my turn here.
Thank you for flying.
Come back and get Quebec 4. This says it's the GA ramp, but it doesn't really look like it, does it?
Yeah, Fox 360, ready for taxi.
Quebec and Quebec 4. And then the GA terminal, I guess, somewhere over here to the right. There we are.
FN 360, runway 31 left, taxi via
Bravo, okay, this looks a little bit more like GA land. That'll work.
31 left, Bravo Juliet, then cross 4 left, Fox 360.
That'll work. Maybe. I mean, this still kind of looks more like cargo, and who the heck knows, guys. Who the heck knows? But we'll pull up to the ramp here. Actually, we'll park it right next to the Chevy. What do you think? That'll do. That'll do, pig. Alright, parking brake on. Taxi lights already off. We did the rest of that stuff on the taxi end. We can go ahead and get engine 1 into stop mode. We'll get the refs reset. I know we're going to owe you guys some winning landing rate numbers here in just a moment. So we'll do that here momentarily. Refs resets. We can get the avionics to dispatch as we are about to shut off the other engine. Climate control can come off. And beacon light can come off as well. Go ahead and get the seatbelt signs off. You guys can go ahead and start piling out. And we'll go ahead and get the second engine. Sorry, yeah, should have done the second engine shutdown before I did the beacon light off, actually. But that's okay. So that's now off, and the you guys are piling out, and we'll go ahead and set our squawk back over to 1200. And back off of mode Charlie. Yeah, we know that there's no oil pressure. That's hopefully by design at this point. Check on our fuel and ETA. Now, I do often say that when I'm flying at a lower altitude, this plane's numbers are a little bit off. If I can get... Hang on, guys. I'm going to try and figure out how to do this without losing the... Yeah, I'm not going to be able to do that. Okay, I'll tell you what. Let's do the landing rate winner first. Again, I'm not going to be able to do this. The little snipper's coming up right behind that landing rate. I will tell you, and you will have to take my word for it, that it's 142, which is what we touched down at. So 142 was our winning number, and my snipper was just coming up behind that little window. So, you'll have to take my word. Where were the predictions? Oops, I'm not trying to zoom. I'm trying to scroll up on the chat here. Stop zooming. I'm trying to scroll up on the chat. Where were the predictions at? 118, 130. What did I say it was? 143? 130 is pretty good. 125, 101. 300 is a little on the high side. 98. So it looks like Majanois with the 130 was the closest, 13 away, with the 143 being the actual. So Majanois is our big winner. We'll go ahead and get you an entry into our monthly landing rate raffle over on the Slant Alpha Adventures channel. Again, we typically broadcast for you Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 7 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. So we'll go ahead and get that entry in for our arrival here today. So congratulations, and I assume I'm saying that that Twitch call sign reasonably accurately, although I'm kind of known for butchering those, so apologies if I'm way off on it, but it looks like Majanois to me. So congratulations. We'll go ahead and get that entry taken care of for you. Again, if we happen to pull that ticket out of our fishbowl week from Wednesday and you're the winner and you're not on the stream to check in with us at that time, it's no problem. We'll go ahead and contact you here via Twitch Whispers. So congratulations for that. And so what I did with my numbers for flight time and fuel burn prediction in this aircraft are based on being at kind of a full, 41,000, 43,000 feet, which is where this aircraft likes to fly. However, coming into tonight, I actually made a separate citation low altitude profile, which uses the slower cruise speed of 300 indicated versus Mach 7.7, and uses a higher fuel burn rate of about 1,200 pounds per hour versus 1,000 pounds per hour, which is the average that you get at the higher altitude. So my numbers should be, we'll see. I mean, we'll see how well my adjustments pan out here. But my numbers should be good in this plane, even though we only went to 17,000 feet today. So I predicted we'd be on the ground at 403 Zulu, on the blocks at 408 Zulu. How do we do on that? I'll tell you what, we're 11 minutes late, but I don't think we got off the ground on time either. I'll have to check to see what time we got airborne from DCA. I think that might have been a ground delay at DCA, which was initiated by us having to double-check that arrival procedure and delete some points. So we're 10 minutes off, but I think we're fine there. Predicted fuel, 2,158 left in the tanks. Let's see how we did. That's 20, what is that, just 1,050 per tank. And we got a little more. We got 2,200 and change, 2,250, maybe. Yeah, 2350, right? 2350. So yeah, we had a little extra from what I predicted, and the flight time and fuel estimate's much less off than normal for a low altitude flight like this, because I went ahead and made a separate profile for low altitude flying in this aircraft versus high altitude flying. So that's not too bad. I might have to just dial those in on a few more, but very happy to have those numbers pretty close. Again, it's just a difference of the cruise altitude of 41,000 feet, or plus or minus. Your cruise airspeed is going to be 450 true, whereas down here at 17,000 it was probably like 325 true. And so that affects the flight time, but it also affects the fuel burn, which at higher altitude, about 1,000 pounds per hour average over the entire flight, whereas at the lower altitude, maybe 12, maybe not quite 1,200, because we had a little more extra left over than I thought. So maybe 1175 to 1150 per hour rather than the normal 1,000 per hour average over the flight. So all worked out fairly well. Let's go ahead and complete the shutdown. And thanks for riding along, guys. Hope that the stream was useful to you if you're planning on flying in the event this coming Friday. Really, honestly, the more useful part, if you didn't catch it from the beginning, would be that panel discussion at the very beginning. So the whole point of this program, which we call the Friday Night Hotspot FNO Preview, is to preview that upcoming Friday Night Ops events, which in this case is the Northeast Corridor event coming up to you on the 18th, Friday the 18th. Want to give a special shout out and thank you very much to our panel tonight. We had a great discussion with, again, the idea is to have a discussion with representatives from the air traffic control organizations on VATSIM that are hosting the FNO event coming up. So thanks very much to Cameron Peterson, Jeremy Peterson, no relation as we established, distant cousins perhaps. Henry Grayer, he was the assistant events coordinator from Washington ARTCC, and then Jared West, the Washington Air Traffic Manager. So thanks to all four of those guys for participating in the discussion tonight, and hopefully you guys got some good tips and tricks for avoiding some of the common errors and issues that are seen flying into, around, and out of these featured facilities. Again, Washington, D.C., DC Reagan National Airport, DCA, John F. Kennedy Airport, which is where we happen to be here, and then Boston Logan up in the New England area of the U.S. All right, let's finish up the shutdown, guys. It's nav and logo lights. Those can come off. There's nav. Logo lights are down here on the button. Never to get the safety lights off. Get those done. What else can we do? The avionics can come into off. That can come off. That can come off. That can come off. And I think that does it. And I think we can just go to a nice little sunset shot of John F. Kennedy International Airport here for you. If I can get it rotated into the right position. Guess the sun's behind us, huh? Alright, so we get a nice closing shot with the moonscape there. What do you say? Oh, I got traffic flying over too. Alright. See if I can square up that camera for you. Alright, there we go. Beautiful picture as we arrive here at John F. Kennedy Airport in the General Aviation Terminal. So thank you very much, guys. Appreciate the flying along. Hope that you did enjoy. Hope that, like I said, hope that panel discussion in particular was useful, but hopefully maybe you got something out of the demo flight too. Again, key takeaway, when you have a procedure, a departure procedure or an arrival procedure, you can't just punch it in the FMC. You got to have that chart in front of you. All right, guys, well, have a great rest of your Valentine's Day, for a great rest of your week. Hope that you have a fantastic event on Friday. We will see you over on the Slant Alpha Adventures channel on Wednesday at 7 p.m. We're going to be doing, I think, what are we going to be doing? Is it going to be some air traffic control? DCA Tower? I think that's the plan, since we're going to miss out on the event on Friday due to our travel plans. So I think we're going to just do some VATSIM air traffic control probably at Reagan Tower or whatever open tower position we can grab for you on Wednesday. But again, that's the Slant Alpha Adventures Twitch channel at 7 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. Hope that we'll catch you over there. The next broadcast that I'm doing on this channel will be 2 weeks from today, as we preview the Coast Starlight Friday Night Ops event over on the West Coast. So we will be back with you on the That's USA Twitch channel here 2 weeks from tonight. Some great broadcasts for you on this channel in the meantime, though. But we will hope to see you Wednesday. Have a great rest of your week. Be healthy and safe in your own travels and your own adventures in the meantime. And thanks for flying along. We'll see you.